Blog Talk Radio.
Welcome to RetroUnlim.com. The only site for everything retro. The Retro Unlim Network for everything retro. RetroUnlim.com.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back once again to the I Got Gameplay podcast, where the games are never over. I'm sure you've already pressed start on the whole situation. The discussion of video games begins now, from past, present, and future. It is me, co-host, off and on again, Braden Mayhew, better known as Food Beast, taking over for Michael Burhan, kind of leading the show this week because he got caught up with work, so I'm kind of taking over the reins, in charge of leading everything and all that. We have a great panel here today to start off. We are going to, of course, begin, as every episode does, with the news, what's going on in video games today rather than what happened yesterday. We, of course, basically my co-host for this evening, we have the one and only Xander Scullion of the Excess Podcast fame from the awesome Retro Unlim Network. How you doing tonight?
I'm doing pretty good. I feel like I wanted to do a Burhan impression, but I got lazy. Say hello.
Well, that is...
Hello, everybody out there.
I've got gameplay.
Yes, you'd have to at least try and attempt at sounding British. It takes a little bit of practice. I guess it'd be harder to try and sound Canadian like me, but also on the podcast today for this panel, we have the one and only Travis Goss of Fanboys Anonymous fame, and of course, rose-colored Let's Plays from YouTube. How you doing tonight?
I'm doing very well. And how's ever all the party people tonight?
Woot, woot. Getting the train going. And, of course, I Got Gameplay regular. He himself has led many shows in the past. Miguel Leon.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to I Got Gameplay. I don't know who he's talking about, but I am here, the nerd genius leader himself, Mr. Michael Burhan. I'm going to stop that now because I'm just making a fool out of myself, and I'm sure Burhan would just destroy me when he gets on for just destroying his people's language. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing just fabulous. I think what he would actually do would maybe chuckle with a facepalm for a bit and then lay into how bad you sound at trying to be British. Or
yeah, that was more
like that.
That was less Michael Burhan and more my Bob Hoskins.
Of course,
if you're going to do a Bob Hoskins, you have to do a little bit of a Cockney accent.
Oh, that wasn't it? Okay, I got to try harder then.
So we're kind of right now. We're kind of like those kids that we have a substitute teacher and we're just really acting up right now.
Yeah, that's what it seems like, or at least it feels like. Yeah.
Hey, just because I'm the substitute and give a little bit of leeway doesn't mean we're that bad now. All right, trust me, it means that. What I forgot to mention for Miguel's introduction, how dare I? He is also the host of the Retro Unlim podcast, the Untitled Movie Show. How was the last episode? Doing pretty good?
I wasn't on the last episode, actually. I actually was going to just not do the episode, but Burhan decided to take over. Long story short, I'm dealing with a botched job transfer, so I'm actually trying to hurriedly move out of my apartment, and it's not as easy as it is. So I was just so burnt out that Thursday, I couldn't do the show, which sucks because I had planned on doing an episode based. I had planned on doing a Ghostbusters episode, a kind of a tribute series, given the unfortunate news this week, but I've talked to Burhan. We're probably going to end up doing that. We're not going to do it live. We're going to do it recorded, but we're probably going to do that sometime this week to kind of fit in with my schedule.
As a major Ghostbusters fan, I would love to be a part of it, especially given like the circumstances earlier this week and all that. It's a big childhood favorite of mine. And moving on from there, we're going to go on to the usual weekly news segment of I Got Gameplay.
Before we go on the news,
okay, you shoot.
We do have another co-host with us today from Getting Your Nerd On, Zach LaCour.
What's up, motherfuckers?
Welcome to the amazing panel this evening, Zach.
It sounds
Great
amazing. Let's all make fun of Burhan all night.
He'll be on eventually. I hope you guys realize that.
It's all right.
So, everybody, you ready for the news in this week's gaming?
What little news there is. I mean, I'm not really finding much, but we'll try to make it up as we go along.
There's at least one big headline.
All right. We'll see what we can dig up.
Yeah, exactly.
I never get tired of that.
Yeah. The introduction to, are we just going to go round table here? Whoever's got a little bit something, we can share it and just go along, tag in, tag out sort of deal.
Yeah, that sounds good.
All righty.
Who wants to go first?
Me.
All right.
Travis, go ahead.
Before we get to the elephant in the room, I just want to talk a little bit about Nintendo, because I know that's going to be the big story, but this is actually something that's going to help show that Nintendo's actually got a serious system on their hands. Retro Studios, as you know, this past week came out with Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze, which is a game I freaking want, because I'm a diehard Donkey Kong fanatic. But anyways, in an article published on ScrewAttack.com, Retro Studios is strongly defending Nintendo's Wii U system, obviously, calling it a powerhouse. Nintendo's home console is often dismissed as a powerhouse, dead-on-arrival machine that won't make a splash in the console market. But Retro Studios president and CEO Michael Kilbaugh believes this is an entirely wrong statement. Quote, "Unfortunately, the perception is that it's not a very powerful machine," he had told GameSpot. "That's not true. It's a powerhouse. It's more than adequate to make great games on." Retro Studios' first WiiWare title, Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze, released for the Wii U last week, and critical response is very high. The studio had to overcome a steep learning curve for Wii U development, Kilbaugh said. The artist approached the challenges and felt uncorked. So that's actually a very, very good thing to hear in supporting this system. If this is the case, if the system really is a powerhouse, I just really, really, really wish a third-party developer such as EA would just make some freaking games for the system.
No, correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't Retro Studios basically a second-party developer for Nintendo?
That's true. They are they are a second-party developer, but at the same time, they are trying to make people aware that this system, don't shrug it off just yet, because this thing still has a lot of capabilities.
You know, I'd take it more into account if it was an actual third-party developer that didn't have a vested interest in Nintendo. But, I mean, to me it would be like if during the PS3 era, if Naughty Dog and Insomniac came out and said that, oh no, don't count out the PS3 yet, guys. It's still awesome. You know, it's a great system. It's fun to make games for. It kind of rings a bit hollow when it's coming from a company that does have an invested interest in the console's success, you know. It kind of just seems like rooting for the home team, which I'm not saying that's a bad thing. It's just I don't put much water into that thought. Not that I'm not saying that I'm saying that the console doesn't have its positives or its advantages. I would hope this would ring more true if it was somebody like an EA, for instance, or a 2K or something like that, a big-time third-party developer basically saying this.
You know, what really depresses me about the Wii U, though, is I did go and pick up Donkey Kong Tropical Freeze last Friday, and, you know, when you go into GameStop, they always ask you, like, hey, do you want to reserve anything? And I'm just like, there's really nothing coming out for the Wii U until Mario Kart 8, and that comes out on the 30th of May. So I told the guy, I was just like, there's really nothing coming out until, like, June. And he was like, say what?
No, I was gonna say, can I say something? But no, you go ahead and finish it. But I got a thing I want to talk about real quick.
But yeah, he was just like, oh, Mario Kart comes out in May, and I'm like, yeah, the 30th of May. That's pretty much June. So from now until June, we don't have anything to play for the Wii U. That's kind of unfortunate.
Well, to be perfectly honest, I felt that case when it comes to all the main consoles. I mean, I can't really, to be honest, think of a game that I've seen for either the Xbox One or the PS4 that's really gotten me excited, that's really just made me think that, this is going to be what to look forward to in the next few months. I mean, it's kind of been just a ho-hum console generation as of late, as opposed to the PS3, Xbox 360 era where there were always those titles you saw on the horizon that you were kind of excited for. I mean, maybe I'm out of the loop, but I just really haven't seen that many. I haven't heard any buzz coming out of either side of any sort of games that have had that effect. I think the Wii U is kind of suffering from it a little bit more because, as I've said before, it's following up the Wii, which there was no way any console that Nintendo was going to put out was ever going to follow up the success of that console, and obviously because they have, the Wii U doesn't have as much access to third-party support as we would like. Not to say it doesn't have any, because it still has a lot of, ports from other consoles that are brought over to it, but I don't know, it's just, I think the Wii U is suffering a little bit more from something that I think all three other consoles are in their own right kind of suffering from.
Yeah. It's just, to me, at the beginning of console wars or whatever, whenever 3 new game systems come out, I always thought it was kind of slow until, you start getting a real library of games. You kind of sit and wait it out for a couple of years before, say a collection of games is worth going out and buying a console for. I don't really see the point in going out and buying it right away in its first year. I would at least wait for a good 2 before going and making such a decision like that. I just kind of figured it was always like that, where you just kind of wait a while until one just kind of sparks your choice game-wise.
Not technically true. I mean, there are some consoles that have had that one big killer app at their release. It's a rarity. You do get an N64 or an original Xbox where it can sell its entire console on just that one game. But yeah, like you said, I mean, nowadays it's just you don't get that powerhouse title out of the gate anymore.
No, it takes a while for it to come out, at least a year or maybe 2 or 3. But yes, moving forward, anybody else have any news that they would like to share with the audience and panel?
I got some news.
Do you share it?
Yeah, this is actually my favorite news probably of all time. There's an article on Kotaku about BioShock porn, and it said that Kevin Levine, the guy who is like the dude behind BioShock, I guess there was a lot of Elizabeth porn and that kind of stuff. So it said that Kevin Levine pleaded with the world to stop making Elizabeth porn. Well, I guess a porn game just came out called, ready for this title, BioCock Intimate. And
nice.
Yeah,
nice.
Right? So it says the guy's work is interesting because it's technically impressive. So people are actually like, wow, this guy's got pretty good skills. And it says the music is pretty impressive too. But my favorite part, it says, it also shows a genuine appreciation for the source material that goes way beyond standard porn parody limits, right down to some hilarious tears that open into places where we all know, I guess, where that's going. So I think this is awesome. I love when shit like this happens.
You know what? I'm just happy that they didn't just go lazy and just say this ain't BioShock, a XXX parody.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They at least went out of their way.
Of the name alone, I think, sold that article. BioCock Intimate.
Yes.
That is awesome.
I'm sold.
You're gonna. Oh, I can just see the B porn adaptation on the way by some sort of greasy filmmaker just on the horizon.
Gives a whole new meaning to Big Daddy.
Yeah. I love the internet.
My head. This is too much. This is too rich.
Too good.
I was gonna say I did have another article, and this is also about Nintendo. I don't know if you guys heard about this, but apparently investors are looking into the mobile market for Nintendo and talking about putting Mario games mobile. And here's the kicker: you could actually purchase to make Mario jump higher.
Oh, I heard that. That's bullshit. 99 cents to make them jump higher.
The modern-day marketing tool of video games. Pay for features. Isn't it awesome?
Ching, 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 ching.
Terrible.
I hate this world.
I've had it with this world.
Yeah, I don't want to live on this planet anymore.
Goodbye, cool bone-filled world.
Say the NES somehow had different things where you can add on to your game, or in the arcade. To make him jump at all, you had to pay like an extra 25 cents in a machine or something like that. I think the market would have died.
Yeah.
But now people just spend their money on silly things like this. Make him jump higher.
Which is funny because the company behind Bitcoin is apparently bankrupt.
Yeah.
Did you guys hear about that?
Talking about Mt. Gox?
Yeah.
Now, they didn't invent Bitcoin, but they started to tool their website more towards Bitcoin, but they didn't realize. That's the thing about Bitcoins is because they're technically a fake thing. They're not actually an actual physical currency. There's a lot of ways that they can be abused and basically made useless. They can basically be watered down. So it's kind of a dice roll in terms of working with Bitcoins. Do any of you guys actually know what Bitcoins are?
No. Yeah, they're a form of cryptocurrency. People use them on the internet. They farm them by like running their processors, and they build up a bunch that they can put in their basically it's like an online wallet.
Yeah,
and
it's just
store it. And it takes forever to build like a full coin. Like it's like you can have like 0.000168 amount of Bitcoin, but that's not even a full coin. Like when it comes to a full coin, I don't even know how much that is in regular dollars. It's in the hundreds.
Yeah,
it's not even probably close to
gone up since it came out.
From when I first heard of it, like the exchange rate has skyrocketed.
Yeah, it did. Yeah,
it's crazy.
So I don't know. After this whole thing happened, though, it went down pretty badly.
No doubt. I don't know if it was issues with the exchange rates, people switching their money for this, and it ended up going south. That caused them to crash so badly.
I think what happened in the case of Mt. Gox was they found the way Mt. Gox's website was set up, there was a glitch in their code that allowed people to actually abuse the Bitcoin farming system, and they could not the farming system, but the accounting system, and actually
like the wallets.
There's a way that they could abuse the wallets and actually get more money into it than they put in. Basically, they were abusing a glitch to boost their Bitcoin amount, and so Gox kind of went under because they kept watering down the system. That's like I said, when it's not a physical currency, it can be abused. I just think it's fascinating that it's gotten to that people have actually created their own fake currency. I'm guessing just how bad the real currency market is. How much the value of today's dollar's gone down.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's kind of, I don't know, it's not really like that fair of a comparison, but like, wasn't it a long time ago in history where like Lincoln, I think it was, switched up for a different form of dollar because he didn't agree with how the old system was, so he just kind of started this new system of money back in like the 1800s.
I believe it might have been when we switched over from gold to the fiat system, where it's basically we make up what our currency is valued at. It's not based on the gold standard anymore.
Yeah, like I'm not saying it's like to that degree, but the fact that the public or whatever has taken up like using a different form of resource to create what they would find is like a new form of currency is very interesting to me. And it's a worldwide thing. Like this isn't just like for say the United States or Canada. Like this goes into even across the seas for people who can potentially farm it.
To me, it comes off as such a rich person's currency, though, because like you said, to really farm out enough Bitcoins to actually make it worth anything, you got to have a room full of computers running constantly. You just got to invest in a bunch of graphics cards and computers and just have those bad boys running nonstop.
Oh, yeah.
It seems like those people that can farm Bitcoins already have the funding to be rich enough as is. It kind of seems like it's not really a viable currency for the middle class, which I think is really interesting.
When I was
go ahead. I was going to say that's like I believe like some of the people in like places like Korea and stuff like that, they actually have a job. That's all they do.
Yeah,
it's farm for like WoW and games like that.
Well, Mt. Gox originally started off as a Magic the Gathering exchange. That's all it was. I think it was like a forum where people could talk about Magic the Gathering and exchange cards and stuff, and then they just decided to get into Bitcoins, I guess, and became a big financial firm, which makes sense. I mean, you go from being a forum where people exchange Magic the Gathering cards. Clearly, financial firm is where you go from there. I mean, that'd be like if Retro Unlimited decided, hey, we're going to be a law firm now. We are ready to believe you.
I wouldn't mind. I wouldn't mind Console Snob being on my side. I think he would do a great job.
Yes. So, moving on from there. Anybody else got any news?
I got a few bits.
Go ahead.
Coin.
Well, I know you guys are big fans of Atlas. You guys are big fans of the company. Recently, they went out of business and they were picked up by Sega, I believe.
Yep.
Well, their first game coming out post Sega buyout seemingly has been announced. Persona 5 coming to the West in 2015.
Woo!
Yeah, this time, unfortunately, it is going to be coming out for the PS3. It won't be a PS4 game, but it is not only coming out in Japan. It has been confirmed it is going to be coming out to the West in 2015. I think 2014 it might get a Japanese release. I don't believe it says it here. But it was originally announced in November 2013, and a lot of people were wondering if it was still going to be coming out post buyout. But it seems as though Sega is going to be bringing this out, and it's going to be coming out, like I said, in 2015. So, you guys excited for that?
Hell yeah!
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I'm really wondering though about the what's going to happen with Shin Megami Tensei X Fire Emblem for the Wii U. I mean, we haven't heard hardly anything about that since Atlas got bought out, and I'm hoping we still get that, because that was a really interesting concept.
Was it the same type of thing like Namco? Or was the newest one? Project Cross Zone?
Yeah, I mean, they didn't really release too much about it. They just released a little trailer being like, this is what we're coming out with. And then, shortly after, Atlas is like, oh, we just got bought up by Sega. So, I mean, It's like we kind of don't, it's kind of in limbo right now.
Well, that's kind of the same thing with what, like you mentioned before, the Tekken X Street Fighter game. I mean, Namco has been just slow to bring that game out. Capcom brought out its version before it, but it's been, a year or two, I believe, since that game since the first one has come out?
Street Fighter X. 2 years, yeah.
Yeah, and no one's heard anything about Tekken X Street Fighter. So crossovers like that are really hard because you got to work with two separate companies, and there's so much business politics and things like that. It's just hard to work with two franchises. So honestly, I'm going to say it right now, I'm not going to hold my breath in terms of the Fire Emblem Cross Shin Megami Tensei game. If it does come out, I could see it being maybe a Japanese release, mostly because the Fire Emblem series really isn't much of a thing over here in America. Tensei has really honed its own fan base as a cult game, but Fire Emblem, I mean, aside from the few hardcore Nintendo fans, I don't even think most Nintendo fans here in America know about Fire Emblem.
Well, they probably know about it at least mostly through Smash Brothers, if they don't know it through the games themselves.
Yeah, and I think that's as far as it stretches.
But I thought we got a Fire Emblem game on the GBA.
Yeah, we did, and there's also one on the 3DS as well.
And the GameCube and the Wii, no?
I think there is for the GameCube, yeah, but I don't know how well it did in the market.
Well, I think it's just like we just pointed out, I think it's because of the Smash Brothers games that it has such a huge resurgence here, especially in this country.
Yeah.
I think it's what actually spread it over to the West, was Marth and Roy appearing in Melee.
Yeah, definitely.
I'm pretty sure anyway. And Path of Radiance came out for the GameCube, and I don't know how big it did, but then Ike got himself a spot in Brawl. So somehow Smash Brothers has kept that series alive for us over here.
I'm actually, going back to that, I'm actually surprised that they, I got it mixed up. I had thought that they had gotten Marth out of the game and replaced him with Ike, but no, it was Roy they replaced with Ike. Because I was actually surprised they did that, because I know Marth in Smash Brothers circles is one of the top tier characters.
Yeah, and he's back for the fourth one, too.
Oh.
So he's in for the long haul, apparently, in the roster. Now, ladies and gentlemen, moving on to perhaps maybe the biggest thing to come out of a news week this week. Nintendo is apparently shutting down their Wi-Fi connection service on May 20th. We say farewell to it. Are they canceling it for DS games or just like the Wii U service? And they're canceling for DS too.
Yes, and I think that takes effect on May 20th.
And is it just for the Wii, or are they shutting it down for even like the Wii U console too?
I know it's for the Wii. I think I'm not sure because I only have a few games on the Wii that actually took advantage of the Wi-Fi connection.
Yes, and a lot of them were kind of subpar.
Well, apart from Mario Kart, that actually worked pretty well.
Yeah, I'm talking more Brawl.
Well, yeah, that's true.
Anybody who tried to get that thing to work when it first launched, and even if you probably try and get to do it now, it'll drive you nuts.
Well, wait a minute. So basically Nintendo's getting rid of their entire online service completely?
I don't know. I think they say their focus is now shifting to the Wii U and Nintendo 3DS. Maybe they're putting all the connection power into those two consoles.
Yeah, I think they merged the two markets together not too long ago. So, yeah, a lot of the WiiWare games and like DSi games are going to be.
Yeah, I think they're cutting ties with the old generation, getting like connection support and focusing entirely on this gen, if that makes any sense.
Oh, so you're saying the original Wii's Wi-Fi stuff is going to be gone, but they're still going to support the Wii U.
I believe that's what they're doing. Yes.
Oh, that makes sense. I mean, it happens after a while. I mean, I remember, I think it was like 2 or 3 years into the PS3's lifespan that they announced that that Sony was shutting down their servers for their games. I mean, it just kind of happens. You have to kind of save your IT support for your most current properties. You know, you can't just keep those servers running all the time. I mean, Jesus Christ, how long does EA usually keep a game online before they decide to pull the plug? Less than a year, I believe.
Yeah.
It seems like you get stories about EA going, hey, you know, we're shutting the servers down for this next month. It's like, but the game's only been out for like 8 months now. It's like, yeah, we're cranking out the sequel anyway, so don't even worry about it.
Yes. So I really can't see them cutting off like internet connection ties to both the Wii U and the 3DS.
Oh no,
I cannot see them doing that.
I could. To me,
really.
I could. The reason I could is because I never got the feeling that Nintendo was really big on online as much, and I think the GameCube was a big example of that. I mean, when online was seemingly starting to be at its peak during the Xbox and PS2 eras, and just Nintendo was just furiously not supporting online. I mean, they had the online connector, but aside from Phantasy Star, no one really used it. That always gave me the feeling that just Nintendo, I don't think they ever saw online as a big thing like we do over here. You know, it kind of screams like how, you know, they really never embraced CDs until the GameCube era, you know, which really hurt them in the long run. And I just feel like if they could, they would just get rid of it and just focus on the single-player, you know, console experience rather than online. You know, I think they just do it just because it's expected.
And because everybody else is doing it in the market.
Yeah.
Practically.
I mean, I'll give them credit. I don't think that they would completely rip out their virtual console service. I think they would keep that up and running just so that people can gain access to their monies. But in terms of the multiplayer end of it, I would not be shocked if Nintendo really is just doing that just because. You know, that
apparently a lot of the matchmaking services that they're putting a lot of attention into, as of course for Mario Kart 8 and the next Smash Brothers, those are what are really getting like the big perhaps online development and care put into them are those two games. Doesn't really speak a whole lot for the rest of the library, according to this article.
Yeah, I mean, I mean, think about it. They completely ruined online, in my opinion, with that whole friend code service. You can't just connect to somebody. You got to put in a big 20-character, you know, code just to be able to play with somebody online. I mean, they can't even do regular online right, you know, simple matchmaking.
I mean, they fixed that with the Wii U, though. You don't have the friend code for the Wii U, which is nice.
Yeah, like I said, I think that they've just had a very tepid relationship when it comes to online multiplayer.
Now, with as me not being a person of any experience playing the Wii U yet, do they also make you use friend codes with that console?
No, Xander just said they don't.
Yeah,
okay.
Not with the Wii U. Yeah, with the Wii U, you just make a username and you can just add each other, kind of like Xbox Live.
And that counts for, like, the whole thing. The whole, every game you play, you can just connect. And, well, thank goodness. I'm like, I cannot see them doing that again. Because not only did you have to have friend codes just to connect consoles to send messages and whatnot, but you needed friend codes for individual games. Any Nintendo Wi-Fi connection-related game would make you add the friend code for that game. It wasn't enough just having the console friend codes. It was a nightmare, a headache. Back when I was first getting used to the Wii, like 6 years ago. Crazy how time flies. Indeed. So now I believe that we can move on to our actual main topic of this podcast.
Already? It's only 8:30. Usually we don't get into the main topic until the 9 o'clock hour. I mean,
I've some news.
I did have two more things to talk about, and one of them, of course, is going to lead to our subject. But apparently, I guess you guys have been reading up about the whole like it's coming, it's not coming Final Fantasy VII remake. Have you guys been catching up on that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Apparently, okay.
Took it as a rumor.
Yeah. Apparently, like at one point, the creator of Final Fantasy came up and he was just like, don't expect Final Fantasy VII to be remade anytime soon, because he was talking about how it would cost him so much money, it would be the biggest project of his entire career, and he was just lacking the motivation to do it. And then it turned around and they were like, well, it might come out. They just said it just might. But, we can kind of discuss this a little bit, because I made a comment on the Happy Console Gamer group page. This is where I read it. And I can kind of understand why they don't want to remake Final Fantasy VII, because it is such a high pedestal game that so many people have so many high expectations for that it could easily be screwed up. Like they could do one thing and just make everyone nerd rage.
I have no doubt that they would screw it up. I mean, just judging by the anti-fanfare from Final Fantasy XIII and its sequels, I mean, I tell you what, watch Spoonie's review of Final Fantasy XIII, all 6 parts of it, and you'll see why there's a lot of trepidation with this new team that's working on the Final Fantasy games. I think it would be a disaster if they remade it. I mean...
Oh, yeah.
Let them start with 8 then. Let them ruin that one, even though it already sucks balls.
Oh, so you're in the camp. You're in Spoonie's camp as well in that regard.
I've never played Final Fantasy VIII because I could never make that kind of judgment. But I will say this. The same posting that Xander is referring to, I made the following comment, and I'm paraphrasing it. What I said was, I really would hate the thought of them remaking Final Fantasy VII, because it would be as like when George Lucas was constantly remaking, re-releasing all the classic Star Wars movies. Mm-hmm. It's perfect as the way it is, and it should not be touched.
I personally want it remade. I want them to make a compilation of all the Final Fantasy VII things and put them all on one disc. Advent Children, the PSP game, Dirge of Cerberus, Final Fantasy VII, the Japanese only video that's like a prequel to right before Final Fantasy VII with Zack starts.
Oh, is it that cartoon?
Yeah, the cartoon. Yeah, I want it all on one disc, and I'll buy it day one.
You're thinking like imagine they did like a Tales of Symphonia type like set for Final Fantasy VII, and you got like a Blu-ray of Advent Children, you got all the movies and the games, and then you got like a really cool Cloud statue. And if they sold something like that for $300, I would spend money on it.
That not only is like Final Fantasy a cash cow, that individual game is they could fucking put that out and make bank.
But see, that's the problem, because it is such a, like I was saying, such a high pedestal game in the sense that, if they went and they changed one little thing, like, because, some people were talking like, well, I want them just to remake it with better graphics, and then some people were like, I want them to remake it but change the battle system. I'm like, whoa, if you change the battle system, if you change any of the story, you're looking at another, like, who shot first scenario from Star Wars.
Yeah.
You're looking at, like, Travis hit the nail on the head on that post when he was talking about Star Wars. I mean, people get so passionate, and if they did one wrong thing, people would just, people on YouTube, they'd be flipping out, boycotting, taking their shirts off, ripping walls, and, like, just flipping out about a Final Fantasy VII remake.
Well, yeah, I want it remade.
Well, here's how I look at it. I would welcome them to release something like that, where it's a Final Fantasy VII collection. Okay, number one, just leave the game as it is, but put everything on a Blu-ray disc. You have the game, you put the movies on there, maybe some other things like behind-the-scenes archive videos, just something, and then so like that. But I really don't like the thought of them remaking a game. I mean, I know that in the past other game companies have remade games for, future systems. I mean, like what they did with Super Mario Brothers and those games. They had Super Mario All-Stars that came out. I mean, that was kind of a minor thing. But we're looking at Final Fantasy VII, and it's such a high-caliber game as that is. It's like Xander just said, you touch one thing, change one little thing, and
don't fucking change anything. Just fucking completely just fucking make that shit HD.
See, people will probably complain about that too, though.
Yeah.
It's that revered. It's
a very delicate
in the polished sort of way.
Well, when it comes to things like Star Wars being remade, I just pretend it didn't happen. I have VHS tapes from 1982, and I just watch those. So I don't really give a shit.
Do yourself a favor if you want to find better versions of the VHSs. I was just looking online and seeing if you could find rips of the Laserdisc version.
Yeah.
The Laserdisc version basically is the VHS version. In I wouldn't say high def, but it's not only is it in widescreen, but it's in surround sound, and I think the quality is bumped up due to the fact that it's from the Laserdisc cut.
Right.
So I would say if you could find that on Pirate Bay or anything like that, I would suggest putting that out there. I've got a friend of mine. Yeah, I've got a friend of mine who's got bootleg DVDs that he bought, which are basically just that. They're the Laserdisc version burned onto a DVD, and they don't look too bad for DVD quality.
Yo, I'll tell you, man, when I was I just bought the VHS tapes at a Salvation Army or whatever, but I'll tell you, man, the quality of those old Star Wars ones, even on VHS, fucking kick ass. They're really nice.
Now, was it the original run of VHS tapes, or was it the 90? Oh, so it wasn't the 97 special edition, because I have that VHS box set from my parents.
Right. Yeah. No, I used to have that one, but no, this is the one from the 80s.
Ah, okay. Nice.
Yeah.
So even better quality.
Yeah, it is. It's actually really fucking good.
More original, anyway.
Yeah.
Because I don't know if Lucas changed anything with that 97 set. I can't really remember if he did or not.
Yeah, the 97 set was the one he changed shit.
Yeah, that was the first special edition, I believe.
Yeah. That's when they put in Jabba and
CG Jabba
all over him. Yeah.
Everybody's favorite Jabba.
Balls.
They should have just kept the guy in the
large guy in the first suit.
No, they should have just left the fucking scene out. It was pointless.
Oh, is it the one with the dancer? With that cartoon dancer?
No, they're talking about the scene in Docking Bay 94 when he's about to get on the Millennium Falcon.
Oh, okay.
And the guy's in a fur suit or whatever, and they just put Jabba over him.
Ugh.
And instead of that guy's Irish accent, they just have Jabba talk.
I think the worst.
Fuck he talks.
The worst post Star Wars edit that Lucas ever did was for the recent Blu-ray. I don't know if you guys have seen that.
Oh, with Darth Vader, yeah.
No, not that. At the end of Return of the Jedi. Okay, at the end of Return of the Jedi, they have the 3 ghost characters. It's, it's Obi-Wan, it's his father, and it's Yoda.
Right.
And then Hayden Christensen.
Yeah, in the original cut, they have the actor that plays Darth Vader under the suit. In the Blu-ray, Lucas decided to edit out that character, and he replaced him with Hayden Christensen from the prequels.
Time on.
He's not even consistent. It's because it's still old Obi-Wan Kenobi.
No, it's not Obi-Wan Kenobi. It's Hayden. It's
Anakin Skywalker.
Anakin.
I know. What I'm saying is he's not consistent because he replaces Hayden Christensen with the older fucking Darth Vader guy, but it's still on the other side is the old Obi-Wan Kenobi.
Oh, it gets worse than that because I saw a video of it. He didn't even make original footage for it. What he did is he took the original actor there. He took the guy. He edited the guy's head out and put Hayden Christensen's head over him.
Oh, nice.
And then I think just in editing, just slimmed down the guy's shoulders because if you play the footage side by side, the same movements are the exact same. It's not like he went in and had Christensen like film some new footage of him dressed up. He literally just spliced over Christensen's head.
That's horseshit.
Oh, man. Yeah. And I could have swore in one of the ones that he did and remade, I don't know where it was, but there's some sort of celebration going on, and you can hear Jar Jar go, Yahoo!
Okay.
At some point during it. Yeah. I don't remember where it was or what scene it was in, but I swear he put Jar Jar's voice in there.
The worst change will always be the Greedo shooting. That is the dumbest shit he ever fucking did.
Yeah.
Inhuman neck movements for the win.
Well, supposedly he did that because he felt that it made Han's character look too
badass.
Right.
It made him look too heartless, that he
right, but I mean, you got to understand the guy's a smuggler to begin with, and Greedo is just, there's out for people to kill him. Like, the guy's just defending himself.
Yeah.
Space Bandit. Yeah.
I'm sure we could do a
noble dude.
I'm sure we could do a whole episode on why Star Wars sucks now. Maybe I'll do that for an episode of my show.
Yeah, you should do that. A whole rant on unneeded inserts to Star Wars via remakes.
I'd have to re-see the old trilogy. It's been so long since I've seen the original trilogy. Not the prequels. I mean the original trilogy.
Yeah.
It's a while since I've seen that.
I'm sure that could be like 4 episodes worthy.
A dissertation on Star Wars.
That would be awesome.
I was just going to make a point that you're saying that you saw this on Blu-ray. That's actually first time I saw that cut that you see on Blu-ray. That was on the eventual DVD release of those movies, and that's when I first saw that with when they put Christian, whatever that guy, Hayden Christensen. Yeah, when I saw that, I was like, "Why did you do that? Why?"
When I saw that, I begged for butt aids.
Yeah, it's like, don't remind me of the prequels in the original ones. I want to pretend that those didn't exist. Why would you do that?
And then when I saw that thing there at the end where everybody's celebrating, and I know I heard Jar Jar's voice, I was going to get sick. And I was like, you son of a bitch, you fucked it all up.
Yeah.
Do you remember what scene that was in where Jar Jar is clearly heard? I don't remember the exact scene.
That's during the whole celebration scene when they cut to his planet.
I'm gonna drop some hardcore shit on this podcast right now. I'm gonna tell you that the second one is way worse than the first one.
Oh yeah, Attack of the Clones is the worst.
It's unwatchable. That movie fucking sucks.
Yeah, you know what? I was bored by it. Like at least with the first one, I have something to be angry about, and the third one at least tried. The second one, I'm just kind of it's a big waste of time.
Yeah, it's so bad.
Like, at least the first one had the end battle and end battle music. That alone makes it better than the second one. Like, number 2 was long, didn't really do anything. It plotted. It was boring. I don't know how anyone could say Phantom Menace is worse than Attack of the Clones.
I think quality-wise, yeah, but I think Phantom Menace gets the nod, though, because, and I've made this joke to Burhan, I'd say that it gets it on its sheer racism.
Do you guys want to know one of the most embarrassing things of episode 1? How horrible Yoda looked? He looked so bad that in the Blu-ray versions they just CGI'd right over it. The puppet.
Oh, when they had the puppet.
Oh no!
Yeah, it's like they had the puppet from Return, like the Empire Strikes Back and the Return of the Jedi. That looked awesome. It looked so good. And then you see the puppet in episode 1, and I was like, "Are you kidding me? Like, this is 20 years later, and it looks horrible." And anyway, they just CGI'd right over. They probably realized how crappy it looked.
Yeah, and I will note that it did make a fan made edit of episode 1 where they cut Jar Jar out completely.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, that's the thing about Jar Jar is he adds absolutely nothing to the main narrative. You can literally edit the whole movie around him.
Yeah.
He's basically just there to be a clown shoe,
Yeah, exactly. I was going to say, I think, Lucas kind of used him as a comic relief, but in my opinion, R2-D2 is the comic relief of those movies. Like, he's a badass, but he's like, I guess the droids in general are, but yeah.
And, comic relief is good when it's funny. Jar Jar wasn't funny. Like, at all.
No, he wasn't. He was horrible. He was annoying and he sucked balls. I literally saw him suck on balls in the behind-the-scenes thing.
And I just have to say this. Another problem with Phantom Menace that wasn't an attack, well, I guess it can follow into Attack of the Clones too, is he didn't need to explain to everybody. Do we really need to know that Darth Vader built C-3PO? Does that need to be addressed?
Well, they showed it in the first one. I mean, I think it was pretty cool that they kind of brought everything like kind of full circle like that. But yeah, was it necessary? Probably not. But I do think that it was that I actually thought was pretty cool.
R2-D2 is just a royal droid, and like those could have just been robots that were around in like the 3 that came afterward. And then you got the whole Jango Boba thing backstory that was explained. I think he tried to explain too many characters from like the final 3 in the prequels, when really all the prequels needed to be about was Obi-Wan and Anakin, and that's it. But we got what we got. And anybody else have any news as we move on past Star Wars rant hour there?
I was just going to say, folks, you're listening to I Got Gameplay here on Retro Unlimited. I do have some other bits of news that we could talk about. One last bit.
Go ahead.
The Xbox One is finally going to get Twitch broadcasting. I know that was a big thing that people had an issue with on launch date for the Xbox One and the PS4, that the PS4 was the only console to where you could use it to stream through Twitch. Now Twitch streaming support is finally going to be coming to the Xbox One alongside Titanfall. When that game gets released, it's going to be released alongside with the Xbox One's ability to stream through Twitch. I know you guys probably do a lot of Let's Plays, so what do you guys think about that?
I think it's about time.
Yeah, man, they're taking over the world.
I think so too. I think especially with YouTube burning its bridges with the Let's Play community, I think Twitch has really started to build its stock up.
Oh, absolutely, without a doubt. Hell yeah. Like Twitch is like the place to go for video games.
And more gamers will go there.
Do people still use Justin.tv and Ustream for stuff like that, or are they just kind of their own service? Has Twitch kind of become the de facto gaming service?
Yeah, I mean, when I used to go to Justin.tv, there was just like chicks like in their bra and underwear just like teasing everyone who was watching. It was fucking pointless. I mean, yeah, there were some people playing games, but it's like with Justin TV, it was pretty much like the same idea of YouTube. Like you could put anything up, so there'd be people playing music, people doing something with movies, people like I said, just like getting into their underwear and getting people to watch that way, and then people playing video games. So Twitch has kind of like honed everything down, like funneled it to where it's strictly video games, and that's I think that's its selling point. Everyone, if you want to watch something, you can go to Twitch and find someone playing some type of video game at some point. Plus, they made that Twitch Plays thing, which has like taken everyone who watches Twitch and like at least like the ones who like Pokemon and put them together to like become a group to try to beat a game, and it's like brought like unity and camaraderie to the group.
Yeah, and going back to what I said before about them not supporting Twitch early on, I think it's bad enough that they burned their bridges with a lot of gamers with all their nonsense with the DRM stuff, but not having Twitch out on day one like the PS4 did, I think really hurt them in a lot of gamers' minds. So it is nice that they're finally coming to the party when it comes to streaming, but do you think it's too late? Do you think that they kind of burned their bridge, or do you think there's still time for gamers to kind of warm up to them again?
Not entirely. There's time because it's not that long after launch. Like 3 months may seem like a super big amount of time, but it's really not. I could see if like maybe they implemented this like a year after the game launched that they might have a bit of a struggle, but this is still very early on in that console's lifespan. Yeah, better they get it done now than way later on, say 6 months after the console came out to a full year after it came out. They got time.
Yeah, like there's a lot of people who say they don't even buy consoles until like a year and a half until they, after they're out, so all the bugs are worked out. So once these people do finally decide to buy something, it'll already be up and going. Yeah, it's not nearly too late, not even close.
I'm still paranoid about Microsoft, honestly, especially with their release coming out. I don't know if you guys heard about this, but there's another Xbox One coming out. It's gonna be $400. Rumored that's going to have no disk drive. Did you guys hear about that?
Why don't they make it so it doesn't have Kinect?
For years, consoles have kind of wanted to get away from discs. It's kind of, I think ever since the PS2 era, I think consoles have kind of been flirting with the idea of not having a disk drive, mostly because it it gets rid of piracy on a physical level, but it also cuts out the pre-owned market, which I know for years console manufacturers, developers, they've been kind of wanting to kind of stifle that. So I'm waiting to see somebody put their best foot forward on that. So if Xbox is going to, yeah, best of luck to them. You know, I know a lot of people who are going to get burned out by that, but, you know, they want to.
I just see it as Microsoft slowly backpedaling to their original idea. You know, like, it's one of those things, like, I could honestly see them coming out with the new system with no disk drive, offering it at a cheaper price and getting people to buy the product, and then, like, you know, once they get a real estate of customers with that system, just slowly start pushing what they originally wanted with the DRM and with the whole digital, you know, this is your game on this system, and just slowly doing it, you know.
Well, let me ask you guys a question on that, because that's always been a question that's kind of floated in the back of my mind. Had they had better PR with that, you know, if they hadn't had the dickhole known as Don Matrick in charge of that whole PR nightmare, I mean, do you think it would have been better received? Because I really do think that, I think there was a lot of people mad about that, but I think the way they handled the PR really compounded that even more to them having to backpedal. But I think had they had a better PR person, do you think that they would have continued with the idea, that they would have just gone head on with it and people would not have been as angry?
No, people would still have been pissed, and they still might have had to do what they did anyway. I can't see people just being like, oh, okay, that's just a new feature of a new console.
I think if it was explained a little bit better, I think you would have probably had you probably would have had some more people that would have probably been more accepting to it. But it was just so like, this is what we're doing. If you don't like it, deal with it. You know?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the attitude was like pretty much like GFY. I remember like one guy who got fired, I think, from Microsoft. He was like, the future is always online. Just deal with it.
Don Matrick. Yeah.
That's him. Okay, yeah. It's like how are you gonna, you know, talk to, you know, the people who are supposed to be buying your stuff like you're right and they're wrong. You know, I'm not 100%, you know, agreeing with the fact that like, the customer's always right, but this guy's just a complete dick, you know. It's like, I'm glad he got fired. I hope that guy's life is ruined. Like, he's just an asshole. That's the stuff that I hate, when people are like making decisions for you and they kind of make it so you don't have any decisions left.
Actually, I believe he's now the CEO of Zynga.
He is.
Oh. What the hell is Zynga?
They're the company they're the Farmville, the Mafia Wars guys.
Oh, okay.
Words of friends.
They're the people that annoy the piss out of you on Facebook.
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
So he's right at home, basically.
Pretty much.
Yeah, sure.
Like it.
Of course. Now, Xander, you said you had one last little piece of news to kind of tie in before we slice into the main topic of this week's episode, and what is that?
The fact that Shenmue has Sega lost a trademark to Shenmue.
Who did they lose it to again?
They didn't release who they lost it to, but they said they no longer have the Shenmue license or the name.
So now speculation is abroad. Now, whoever bought this license is either just going to kind of keep it and we see nothing of it, or maybe this could point signs to that series actually making a comeback years later. Huh.
Well, let me just say this in terms of that regard. I would only care about who has the rights if it's two companies. One is Quantic Dreams, and the other is Traveler's Tales. Quantic Dreams, by the way, for those of you guys, is the developer behind Heavy Rain, and Traveler's Tales is the company behind the most recent Walking Dead adventure titles that have come out for the PSN and Xbox Live. If either one of those companies has it, I'm all for it, because I think those two companies have really set the bar for interactive video game storytelling better than any other company in the modern era. And I think they could really bring out the essence of what Shenmue was trying to be on the Dreamcast and Xbox with Shenmue 1 and 2.
It'd be really interesting if Quantic Dream did get it, though. I was a huge fan of Heavy Rain. That's like one of my favorite games from the last generation. So, yeah, it probably isn't them, but we can hope. That'd be awesome.
I just hope it's not some I just hope it's not some horrible fourth-rate developer like, Kemco got the rights to it, and they're going to be making their own version of Shenmue 3. Or Crave Entertainment got the rights to Shenmue. Like, Jesus Christ.
We can hope.
Titus, the developers behind Superman, they somehow got the rights to it. I'm like, what?
Oh, no. No.
Oh, not Superman 64. Do we even need to pretend? Can we just pretend that game never got developed?
What game?
Exactly.
Oh, no, I mean, I like the thought of Shenmue with a bunch of rings of the walkthrough in order just to ask questions about sailors.
He'll be like, I think I'll walk through another.
That does bring the question, though. Whoever does have the rights to it, you think they're going to reach out to who's the developer that made it? Was it Yu Suzuki that made the first Shenmue? I think he might have been the developer behind it. He was the lead designer for it. You think they would reach out? Yeah, you think they would reach out to him if they decided it was Yu Suzuki. I know he's not working for Sega or AM2 anymore, but do you think that whoever is the developer would reach out to him and maybe see if he wants to be involved in it? I mean, it is technically his baby. He was the producer / director of it.
If they're smart, they'll do that.
Yeah, it'd be the better decision. I'd like to see it happen. And they should. But it's if this whoever bought the rights to it plans on bringing it back. That much we still don't know. We can hope that it's like a resurgence for the series, but we don't know if whoever owns it now is actually going to plan to do anything with the IP. That remains to be seen. Always hope for the best, though. Always.
Well, I see it as kind of a situation similar to Shadow of the Colossus, where I think a game gets enough name recognition on a cult level that when they do end up taking advantage of it, it gets huge and it brings back revenue in spades. And I use Shadow of the Colossus as an example where Ico sold nothing when it first came out, but it was so beloved by the video game industry that when that same team came out with Shadow of the Colossus, that game already was a huge hit just out of the gate, just because of so much word of mouth to how much people loved Ico. I could see that situation with Shenmue 3. You know, regardless if it's good or not, I think enough gamers are going to invest in it just on the name and just the mystique behind it.
The name value alone and legacy will kind of push it forward.
Yeah, I don't know if it's going to be a blockbuster hit, but it's going to be enough of a hit to where I could see this franchise kind of being able to sustain itself.
Absolutely. So now, as we move along to the main portion of this week's video, as I said, Xander's last little bit of news ties into it. We are going to take a look at Sega's perhaps their last stand in the video game console market, and that, of course, was their final console they ever sold in competition in the sixth generation of video games. That, of course, was their Dreamcast console, and it was released.
Do we want to take a commercial break before we get into the main event, like we normally do?
Yeah.
It's up to you guys if you want to take a commercial break or you want to just go right into it, because I know.
Or do you want to do like a bit of like go into it and then take a break midway through?
I'm trying to get the soundboard up to do that.
Yeah, we usually hit the Star Fox button.
Yeah.
Do a barrel roll. Well, on that note, we are going to find the break button, but when we come back, we're definitely going to talk about the Dreamcast, basically a little bit of background history of it, its launch, and the lasting legacy it had, and its basically what we'll touch into is unfortunately very short lifespan on this side of the globe.
I'm just going to play the Zelda commercial.
Go for it.
Yeah, go ahead.
We'll be back.
off of the amazing orchestral Zelda music we had playing there. It's epic.
Because makes sense on an episode where we're devoting time to the Dreamcast. Our bumper is The Legend of Zelda.
Well, to be fair, it's kind of ironic because I pitched talking about the CDI tonight to Burhan. I guess he thought the Dreamcast would be a better decision.
Yeah.
The CDI is infamously known for its Zelda titles. But moving on, of course, we're talking about the far superior console, and that is the Sega Dreamcast, which was released by Sega in Japan in November 1998, and later in 1999 here in North America and Europe, and even Australia, just at different points of the year. But we got it, I think, in September
1999.
Yes, 999. Europe got it on October 14th of the same year, and then Australia later got it on November 30th. Very, very interesting console. It didn't really have the longest lifespan here, but it left a lasting impact. And it was basically started off of, I would say would you say colossal failure of the Sega Saturn or just medium failure of the Saturn? Because it was basically rushed into being finished to kind of compete with the consoles that were coming out, such as the GameCube, the PlayStation 2, and later on, the Xbox, which, interestingly enough, I kind of researched, it kind of has ties with the Dreamcast, that a lot of what the Dreamcast did got implemented with what Microsoft did for the Xbox, because the two companies actually kind of worked together for some Dreamcast-related projects.
Yeah, I don't know if you want to talk about that now or kind of use that as a capstone for later, for towards the end, but I wouldn't say that the Dreamcast itself was the Saturn itself was a failure. I think what had happened was you really got to go back further to kind of Sega's fallout post-Genesis, the kind of how the bottom kind of fell out for them. For those of you that don't remember, before the Saturn had come out, Sega was going through huge financial troubles. They had the 32X that bombed on their end. The Sega CD was a huge bust for them. Not as big as 32X, but it was still a bit of a bust. The Game Gear itself never caught on, and Sega just had way too many consoles and stuff that they had to support at the time. So they were going into the Saturn on pretty much busted knees. You know, they had botched the launch. I talked about that a couple months back on a Video Game Bombs episode, the whole Sega Saturn launch. So I wouldn't say that the console itself was a failure. I just think that there were too many factors behind it to necessitate its failure. You know, it really had no chance to really blossom as a console itself.
And not to mention competing against the successes that had already been around, or that, you know, like, there were a lot of big titles out for the other systems back then. And I don't know, was it necessarily hard for people to develop for?
Yeah.
Or there just wasn't enough interest in developing for it? I know it had some issues with actually getting, like, support development-wise for different sort of to kind of compete with the other consoles around at the time.
I've heard that there were a lot of issues developing for it, and it kind of befell the fate of the the Jaguar, where I think it had multiple processors in it, handling both sound and graphics, and because of how hard it was to code for this new type of processor, a lot of games that did get made for it really never took advantage of that, so where you would see the Sega Saturn ports of a PS1 title, and it would have much worse graphics or much worse sound, and that was kind of the reasoning behind it. You know, it really didn't have anybody that could take advantage of its power. Almost similar to what the PS3 went on with early on, where people were having trouble making games for the cell processor, so you had a lot of subpar ports of Xbox 360 games in its early run.
Yeah, and then thankfully it was able to kind of shake off of that and move forward, whereas the Saturn, I don't even remember how long its lifespan was.
I believe officially 1998 was its official end. I think by then they were already in development of the Dreamcast, and I believe it may have came out in 90. Yeah, it came out in 96, was ended by 98. So I think it had a slightly longer lifespan than the Dreamcast itself.
As I said, with the Dreamcast, it was kind of, unfortunately for it, by the time it came out, it was just a little too late for a console like that to be competing, because if it came out any earlier, I think it could have done very well.
What, the Dreamcast?
Oh, yeah. Like if it came out, say, they didn't release the Saturn and they kind of were able to come up with that when the Saturn came out, I think it could have done far better.
We'll talk. I think we'll talk about why the Dreamcast flopped, because there was a big reason why it failed. When we'll get to that later when we get to it. But to kind of help guide this, so the console launches, and I'm just gonna say right off the bat, I think the Dreamcast honestly probably had one of the best launch lineups for a console ever, just in terms of not only how many games were out for it, but how many big titles were out at launch. I mean, let's name the two big ones, that being Sonic Adventure and Soul Calibur, which still to this day are considered two games that are high up there in terms of the Dreamcast. I mean, they usually fight for number 1 and 2 in terms of the greatest games for that console.
Man, Miguel, I thought you were going to mention Blue Stinger.
Of course.
Shut up, both of you. I believe Marvel vs. Capcom was a launch title, too, that it was available when the console actually was first released, too, wasn't it?
I believe so. I'm about to. No,
I don't think it was, because
Power Stone was.
Yeah, Power Stone was. Yeah.
That's what you're thinking of, because Marvel vs. Capcom came out a few months after the Dreamcast launched.
Okay, I was thinking something like that. It's been a long time.
I got the list right here. A lot of launch titles actually came out for it. You have Aero Wings, Air Force Delta, Blue Stinger, Kart Flag to Flag Racing. We won't even remember that. Expendable, not based on the Sylvester Stallone movie, although that would be awesome. House of the Dead 2, forgot to mention that. Hydro Thunder, forgot to mention that. Monaco Grand Prix. Mortal Kombat Gold, which is basically just a port of the fourth Mortal Kombat game. NFL 2K, which is something I want to talk about later on. Their sports titles. NFL Blitz 2000, Power Stone, Ready to Rumble Boxing, which I love that game to death. The titular Sonic Adventure and Soul Calibur, as I mentioned, and then you have stuff like TNN Motorsports Hardcore Heat, which is a big rig monster truck game, Tokyo Extreme Racer, and the Trick Style game. And that was their launch title. So not the most high end. Well, let me take that back. It's a very robust launch title, and for a launch title, they had some pretty high profile games for it. So what are your guys' thoughts on that?
It's just they had a lot of different games at launch, a lot of different selection for people to choose from. So at least there was variety when it first came out. Usually, as we've seen with the recent launches of the last three big consoles that came out, there's nothing really kind of big in terms of variety for different types of top-tier games. Usually that you see at the first launch of a certain video game console. This one had quite a few. Even having Soul Calibur and Sonic Adventure kind of launch at the same time is a big deal. So I would say very impressive. So I'm sure it probably did very well when it first few weeks when it was being sold. Very impressive lineup.
It did, but like with any console or any sort of bit of tech, there were a couple issues hardware-wise with it. I know there were some issues with those early launch titles, those early launch titles, either the CDs themselves not working or the consoles themselves, but you're going to have that with any console, so I wouldn't say the Dreamcast launch was without its hiccups, because it did, but nothing too major. I mean, it still sold pretty well going into Christmas that year.
And still a lot of different stuff for different people to buy, to play, a good variety for first starting out, which you don't see that very often for different sorts of consoles. Anybody else have any opinions on the impressive resume that the Dreamcast brought upon launching in North America and elsewhere when it hit Europe and Australia?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the Dreamcast lineup of launch games is fantastic.
That's still there. You kind of
not only in the sheer amount of them. You look back at Super Nintendo. Oh, can you hear me?
You kind of cut out there for a second.
All right. I think it's impressive due to not only the amount of titles. Like if you look at Super Nintendo over in the United States, there was 5 launch titles. I mean, to be fair, they all kick ass. But it's like you have sports games. You have like something like Sonic Adventure, like a platforming game or whatever that was. House of the Dead, which is like a light gun game. Mortal Kombat fighting game. You have Soul Calibur, which is a different type of fighting game. You have racing games. You have all kinds of shit. They were definitely making a launch, making their launch title so they could appeal to pretty much everybody.
Zach, Travis, you got anything you want to say about this?
I was just going to say that I was lucky to have gotten a Dreamcast as an early birthday present because I wanted that system so bad. And playing Sonic Adventure was just like such a mind-blowing experience because that was like the first official fully 3D Sonic game to have come out. And the way it was programmed on that system just made the game just incredibly fun to play. And the other game I got along with the system was Mortal Kombat Gold, which all it was just a prettier version of Mortal Kombat 4, but it was still a lot of fun. But that system had so many great things, and it had like a very unique saving system. That the virtual memory unit, the VMU, which had that built-in screen. We'll get to that here in a little while, but that system was very ahead of its time. But at the same time, I think that might have been its curse a little bit.
Well, that actually brings up an interesting point, and that's something I kind of wanted to also lead into with that is how each of you guys kind of became introduced to the Dreamcast itself. Because I'll start off. I'll be honest. I kind of looked over the Dreamcast when it first came out. I think right around that time is when I actually first got my PS1, so I was entrenched in the PS1 by the time that console came out, although I do remember the ads for the Dreamcast. I honestly didn't really get into the Dreamcast that much until I think about 2005, and it was actually through it was actually through the G4 network. They had I had just started watching the series Icons, and they had just launched with their Dreamcast episode. And I was just getting into video games. I had just started collecting magazines. I had just gone onto websites and stuff. And watching the story of the rise and fall of the Dreamcast just hit me so hard, just seeing this console and just how revolutionary it was and just how it pretty much vanished off the market and led to the exit of really the biggest competitor in video games at that point. I was so entrenched with it. I went out, I researched the Dreamcast, I looked all over the place, I couldn't find it, and then I remember on a trip out of state running into a GameStop and seeing one just tucked away in the corner. This was back when this was at EB Games. This was back when EB Games still had a little section of Dreamcast games, which, doesn't seem that far off from today, but trust me, it dawned on me a couple of years earlier today that was like 10 years ago. But I remember seeing it there. It was like for $15. I immediately picked it up and took it home and have been playing it ever since. I mean, I've had to replace it because those Dreamcasts really don't last too long, after a while. But I still play it as much as I can to this day. Anybody else want to take it from here?
Yeah, I have a really really funny story how I got into the Dreamcast because I was like you, Miguel. Like I looked past it because I had also just gotten a PS1 and I was already hearing about the PS2, so I was kind of like in Sony mode at that point. But it wasn't until I watched Happy Console Gamer a couple of years back, and he did a video called The Dreamcast Rocks, where him and his co-host Robman were just gushing about the system, and that kind of made me think. I was just like, man, I've heard people for years talk about this underrated Sega system. And what was funny is I was going through a breakup at the time, and I was a little depressed, and I'm like, I want to get something to make myself feel better. So I decided to buy a Dreamcast, and coincidentally, I did this on principle. I did this on purpose. I bought my Dreamcast on Friday the 13th. I bought it because I was just like, you know what? It's Friday the 13th. I'm buying a system that's really good, but it was just down on its luck. And I'm so glad I've had a Dreamcast now for almost 3 years, and it's became one of my favorite systems of all time.
Travis? Okay, we'll skip Travis. Braden, how did you get introduced with
sorry
the
about that, guys.
Go ahead, Travis.
Go ahead, Travis. How did you get introduced to the Dreamcast?
Well, I was following all the video game news and all that stuff. And I've actually was a Sega fan, and I still am. I played the Genesis. I had, the Sega CD, which again I still have. And I just had a Saturn. I just followed it along. It's like I thought. I know they didn't have the best systems in the world, obviously, but their games were still a lot of fun. But then I was just reading a bunch of magazines and staying informed and everything. And when they announced the Dreamcast, and I saw some videos of the games in action, I was like, okay, Sega, I think you've actually done something right for a change. This looks pretty cool. And just to finally get a chance to play it, because I didn't get a chance to play that at any kiosks or anything when they were trying to promote it. But just to get my hands on the system and just playing Sonic, and then eventually playing all those really great AAA title games, not only from Sega, but they had really good third-party games, especially Resident Evil Code Veronica. I was like, this is what Sega should have been doing all along, making a really great system. But, yeah, it has some really great memories with that really, really cool thing.
Braden, you want to cap us off in terms of talking about the launch? How you got involved with it? How it launched in your life, basically.
Well, how it launched into my life is very, very vastly different from you guys, to the fact that I have had very, very little exposure to Sega consoles throughout my entire life. In fact, with the Dreamcast, I don't know if I have played it. It was one of those things where, as a Nintendo and Sony goer, where around this time I would have been really into the first PlayStation. So, and even more so than Nintendo 64, because I owned a PS1 before that. So if Sega consoles, say like the Genesis, I would have to go over to, say, a friend's house who might have owned one and got some experience with it there. So I'm pretty sure maybe back in days when I was really young, I probably had the same thing with the Dreamcast. I just don't remember. But I got into really kind of learning into the history of Sega and really what they brought to the market for themselves and how they were such a big competition to Nintendo through just learning the history of video games and being able to appreciate what these companies have done in the past, the games that have existed, and kind of just looking into it as a historian and fan of the industry, and just found that just everything about the console seemed to stand out from, say, the competition that it should have been competing against, like the N64 or the PS1, and just it came out at just too late of a time where it is kind of sad to say, but it's one of those things, say, you look up the success of the arcades back in the 80s and what they did for gaming. I'm sure we might have little exposure to doing that, initially for a lot of the older systems, but we still appreciate it and look back on what they brought to the industry and how they helped move it forward before the crash. It's just one of those things that, as a person who talks about video games quite a bit, it's something you want to try and learn more about and just see what they brought to the table. And I just think what it brought to the table was very, very interesting, even though I've had no personal experience with it myself, or at least to the degree that I'm sure you guys have had. But I find it a very interesting console nonetheless, especially with how it probably helped out Microsoft in the long run as well, from what I've learned about it.
We'll get into that because I noticed a real significant connection between Microsoft and Sega. I'll get into that when we get into the fall aspect of it, because make no mistake, when this console first came out, it was a huge hit. It was, like I said, it sold hugely during the Christmas year. We'll also get into that soon, but going back to what Travis was saying, they brought a lot of unique features to video games when it first came out. You mentioned before the VMU, let's start about that. The visual memory unit, this was coming right around the time where memory cards were starting to become very vogue with consoles. You had the PS1, which kind of really set the standard for it. You had the N64, which was kind of still flirting with the idea, although I do think that they really never really embraced memory cards the way I think they should have. But the Dreamcast really put it a step further, not only by allowing you to have this little memory card unit that conveniently hooked into your controller rather than the console, but it brought a sense of functionality with it by letting you interact with the VMU through the screen. Not only with being able to keep track of your saves saves on it, but being able to trade saves with people via connecting two VMUs together, and in some cases, Sonic Adventure comes to mind, being able to download little mini games onto it to be able to play around at your leisure. Keep in mind, folks, this was right around the time when Tamagotchis were big, so carrying around little, cartoonish little pets and things like that around was a very vogue thing in the late 90s. So yeah, did any of you guys actually ever use your VMU for that, out of curiosity?
I did.
You did? You played it around like a little Gigapet?
Well, yeah, I mean, the chows in the game, it was just like Tamagotchi, and I was into that fad at the time. So I thought this was kind of a unique approach to it, and of course, I guess when they were developing the system, they thought, well, we're putting Sonic Adventure on here, but let's see if we can try to exploit the VMU in some way. Oh, I know, how about a pet raising game?
They wouldn't be the first, actually, to do that. Sony, actually, in Japan, had a little system for that. I don't know if you guys are familiar with the Pocket Station. It was basically their proto-VMU that they were going to have for the system, where in a lot of cases, there were some games that they made that actually allowed you to play little mini-games onto it. Probably the most famous one being Final Fantasy VIII, I believe, had a little Final Fantasy game on its Pocket Station. I don't know... They never came out with it for the U.S., but I think the ability is still there to do it. They just never brought the actual hardware to the U.S., but Sega wasn't the first, but I just think it was really funny that they embraced that here in America.
Yeah, it was. I remember it was for Final Fantasy VIII, and it was some sort of like Chocobo mini game. I remember that because all my friends used to make fun of the Pocket Station and call it the Playboy.
All right.
Like, yes, the Playboy.
If it's any consolation, if I had a VMU, I would use it like a Tamagotchi.
Well, see, what's funny is my VMU, like the battery died a long time ago, so it still saves, but whenever I turn on my Dreamcast, it makes like a god awful sound.
Xander, you can get like the 2032 the Sierra 2032 batteries for like if you go to tmart.com, you can get like a pack of 5 for like $1, and they'll just send them for free. And you just unscrew the back, and you put 2 new. I think that takes 2. You put 2 new batteries in there, it'd be good as new.
It does. It does.
The more you know.
Nice.
Yeah, here you talk about the more you know. I know I should really leave this for the end, but I should really talk about this now. Does somebody have some banging in the background? I just want to point that out.
Okay, I'm just going to kill the elephant in the room right now. That is my baby brother dragging his hockey stick across the top of the floor. Just anybody who's like listening wonders what the hell that is. He's up. He's really hyper. He's running across, dragging his play mini stick, hockey stick across the floor.
He's getting ready for another Olympic game.
And he's doing face-offs, and he's just going crazy up there. So if you're hearing a sheer amount of banging and splashing and everything, that is a 2-year-old playing hockey with a mini stick above my head.
That's adorable. But I figured I might as well bring this up now since we're talking about the VMU. That's one of the reasons why I kind of wish the Dreamcast had kind of held on a little bit longer, because they were actually going to come out with a VMU 2. They were going to come out with a new version of it, and supposedly this version was going to allow for MP3 downloads. You'd be able to use it as a music player.
Interesting.
Oh, you mean like kind of like the Xbox? Like you can in game you can make your own soundtrack?
I believe so, or it would have had some type of like PC support where you could have downloaded MP3s using a PC or something like that. But I know MP3 functionality was going to be implemented into the second generation VMUs had the Dreamcast continued. I know that was one of the things they had been planning.
Very cool. I actually wanted to say one thing about the VMUs. When I was playing the Dreamcast, I remember my sister has bought me, I mentioned them in like a bunch of my videos, she's bought me cool ass shit like my entire life. And for one of my birthdays, she bought me Skies of Arcadia for the Dreamcast. And that's one of my favorite games. Yeah, that's one of my favorite games, pretty much of all time. But one thing that was really cool was when you had a VMU in, one of the characters, her name was Cena, and she had this animal that, okay, so like if you had like people in the group, like 3 people in your group fighting, two of them would like go hit the person you're fighting, and she would have this thing that would do like the fighting for her. She was kind of like I'm a princess, so I'm going to send this thing to do my bidding or whatever. So you could level her up, but to level that actual Kupel, wasn't it? Yeah, Kupel. To level him up, he was like on the VMU screen throughout the entire game, and so to level him up, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Oh, okay. I guess it's him. All right. Anyway, so throughout the game,
I don't know if it's I don't know if that's on my end or not. But,
yeah, it sounds like you're on a bit of a delay there, Miguel. But yeah, I just heard Zach just fine. Go and continue.
All right. So anyway, so he was always on your VMU, but the way you leveled him up was by finding like these moon shards, and the closer, like if you were walking around, you couldn't necessarily see them on the ground, but the closer you got, he would tell you like on the screen, and when you were like standing right above one, he'd be flying around and like the controller would be vibrating and shit. So you knew there was like a moon shard there, and you could pick it up, and then you could feed it to him, and then he would, if he was fed enough, he would evolve, and it was just awesome. Like I thought that was such a cool feature in the game.
I remember. It sort of
sounds like that game. It sounds like the game had a little bit of some Pokemon elements involved too. In a way,
like Arcadia?
A little bit. Sounds like it.
I don't
you
see
evolve and all that, that's what you said, evolve.
He evolved. Oh, yeah. I guess I get what you're saying, yeah. But he doesn't evolve through fighting. He evolves through feeding him the moon shards.
Oh, okay. Now I see what you mean. Okay.
Well, like, she like levels up through fighting. For him, you have to feed him the things. What's up, Miguel?
I was going to say, I have a copy of Ready to Rumble Boxing for the Dreamcast, and I know that the VMU shows your stats during the...
yes, that was kind of cool.
No, it's very cool. That's so fucking cool. It's like they took... like the idea of a memory card and just put it on steroids, and it was awesome.
Yeah. How much solace do you guys take in the rumor that the original Xbox was going to have that same support that they got rid of it at the last second? Because I know a lot of people have said that. If you notice on the Xbox, it does have memory card support on it, even though I know a lot of people who did not use it because of the fact that the Xbox itself had a hard drive, but I know that a lot of people, there was a rumor going around that the original Xbox was going to have VMU, like some type of version of its VMU on there, which is why you have that big gap in the middle of the controller where that big Xbox gem is on the original Duke.
I sort of remember something like that, yeah.
Okay, yeah. That could be. I never heard that before, so I don't know.
It wouldn't surprise me.
It wouldn't. I think, though, that plan probably fell through once they decided to put a hard drive in the console. They were kind of like, no one's going to use a memory card, which was pretty much the case. I can't think of anybody that really used a memory card on their original Xbox.
Yeah, I think it was more or less like people who had money to burn. Because, like, they could, it was almost like, you know how, like, in the Neo Geo, you could, like, use a memory card and, like, take it to the arcade and, like, do whatever there and, like, bring it back and put it back in your system. That was pretty much the idea of a memory card for the Xbox. It wasn't necessarily to save your game. It was so you could bring it to somebody else's house or to, like, transfer your data into somebody else's card. Almost like just like the one they had for the 360. I mean, that's the only thing I've ever seen it used for.
I remember the N64 kind of had that with certain games.
Some people just... It seems, but it's weird though. The N64 is weird because some had saved batteries, some had to use the card. The Xbox was everything saved on the hard drive, so it was completely optional.
Well, no, I was going to say with the arcade interactivity, I remember Midway for a while when they were still making arcade cabinets. A lot of their arcade cabinets had slots where you could plug in memory cards for your N64 and transfer your files over. I distinctly remember seeing an old NFL Blitz cabinet, like a big 4-player one, the big huge 2-screen size one, that actually had in the middle a slot where you could plug in your N64 cartridge and you can transfer your files over and play it on there, which I thought was really neat.
Yeah, that's cool.
But, the VMU was a big thing for the Dreamcast, but I think we all have to acknowledge probably the biggest aspect that the Dreamcast brought, the modem. It's dedicated online support. Now, by the time I got a Dreamcast, I couldn't use it. I think Sega had pretty much shut down their servers by the time I had gotten a hold of a Dreamcast, so I never got a chance to use the web browser or play any games online. Yeah, I was going to ask, do any of you guys have any experiences using the web browser or playing online?
I do. this was shortly a year after the system launched. I actually entered a contest on Sega's website where there's that big thing with the Family Values Tour. Do you guys remember that?
Oh, yeah.
Biscuit and Corn? Yeah.
Oh,
well, they were the Family Values Tour and Sega had a joint contest going, and the grand prize winner won an autographed Dreamcast and some games, and actually got passes to a Family Values Tour concert or whatever. Well, I actually got first place. I didn't get the grand prize, but I got like first runner-up. And I actually won a Dreamcast through that, which was still okay, which was autographed, but it wasn't. And I got some games, and one of them was Quake 3 Arena. And try playing that game on the dial-up modem on that system. I mean, in 1999 or 2000, that was still pretty high-tech, I guess you can say. I think this is before, like, broadband really took off. But can you imagine trying to play that game on dial-up, playing against Fred Durst, because that was one of the things I got to do when I got my first, one of the prize.
How do you know it was him?
I know, that's weird. Yeah, Fred Durst is here, and he's smashing stuff up. And I was like, okay, great, woohoo. It could have been just one of the guys at Sega as far as I knew, but anyways. But that game was really hard to play on a dial-up modem. And if you guys have played Quake Arena in some form, you know how fast that game is. But yeah, that was a bit of a chore.
Yeah, I actually had Quake 3 for the PC a while back. I think I still have my CD, but, I mean, I don't know, maybe it might have been your connection. I mean, Quake 3 was made at a time when dial-up was the only thing. Keep in mind, 99, you didn't have cable modems. Really cable modems hadn't really hit the market, so there were very few people that actually did do broadband. Although I will give the Dreamcast credit, before it went out in 2001, they did release a broadband adapter. It's hard to find. I'd love to get my hands on one, but they do exist out there.
Why would you like to get one?
Just to be able to say that I have it, be able to put it on my console. And I will admit there are some private servers that still do run Dreamcast games. Like Sega's official servers are down, but from what I've heard, there are still people who still run their own private Dreamcast servers for certain games, like Phantasy Star and things like that.
That's like Xbox Live. There's Xbox Live servers for the original Xbox that are still up that you can connect to.
Just not the official ones for the games themselves.
Right.
But Zach, what's your experience with the Dreamcast in terms of online?
The only thing I knew is my cousin had one like right when it came out, and I think he had one right when it came out, and he loved it. I remember him telling me he played things online, but I mean when I got a Dreamcast, it was probably around like 2003 or 2004, so I got it really late. I've never ever played it online ever.
Yeah, I like I said, by that point, I think Sega had pretty much ended their support of their servers. Xander, your experiences with the Dreamcast online?
Yeah, I never played it online because I mean, like I said, I didn't get a Dreamcast until like 3 years ago. So yeah, by the time I got it, that online stuff was just completely out of the question. Unless I could have found a broadband adapter.
Braden?
The short lifespan, man. I wasn't even playing games online for years afterward. I don't even think I even touched anything online gaming in the PS2 era, let alone like Dreamcast era. So I have really no experiences with online gaming until like after that generation for sure. But kudos to anybody who did. Could you imagine like playing PlayStation 3 with a dial-up network? Like if that was still the only way you could connect to the internet. You know,
well,
don't pick up the phone while I'm downloading the phone.
To actually get it.
Well, I'll be perfectly honest. There's still a very robust dial-up market out there. There are still people that still use DSL. There's still people out there who still use America Online.
Well,
like AOL.
Dial-up will never die because dial-up, you can connect through dial-up through any telephone line on the planet. So it's like, if you go to places that don't have internet, if you had a dial-up service, you could connect to any telephone line and be on the internet. Yeah, it might be slow, but I mean that's why it's never going away.
Yeah, I mean, AT&T still has their Uverse set up, which I think, no, they still have AT&T DSL. I think Verizon still supports DSL, so it's still out there. You know, we harp on dial-up, but I mean, it's still a viable market. I mean, I was blown away when I I'm still working for them, but working for Walmart, seeing kiosks that still had Net Zero CDs. They were still selling. I'm like, man, Net Zero, that's such a relic of the late 90s, early 2000s.
People used to hoard those things. I knew friends that would just have like buckets full of American Online and Net Zero CDs and just have free internet.
This is only good for a week. I can't give these away. I need 52 of them.
I will say something about their online service, which I think they really dropped. I'll say they missed out on one key feature that I think they could have jumped on before their successors did. Do any of you guys remember Sega Channel? I think we might have mentioned it back in the Console Wars episode last week.
Yeah, we did.
Familiar with that?
My buddy
I guess it's even been mentioned before that too. It's been mentioned at least twice on this show.
Yeah,
so we all kind of have an idea of it.
Yeah, for those of you that don't, Sega Channel was basically a service that Sega offered for the Genesis, where if you had your system connected to a cable route, like a cable hookup, you could dial into this service where Sega would stream games basically to your console, and a lot of times they would have exclusives. Like I didn't even know that Golden Axe 3 was actually an exclusive to the Sega Channel. You know, really people didn't have access to it until emulation came about later on. You know, the only place you could play that game was through their Sega Channel service, and I kind of would have liked to have seen them really have implemented that in the Dreamcast era, like an early Xbox Live of sorts. I think that would have been really cool.
Yeah, I agree, dude. But I mean, it's like, that was like so new. I mean, out of all the people I've ever met, I've only known one person who ever had that.
Yeah, Sega Channel was only Sega Channel, because it was cable based. You had to have a cable service that supported it. So It wasn't just something you could have anywhere. You had to be in an area where your local cable provider had a deal with Sega to do Sega Channel. So it was a neat idea, but it really didn't have the infrastructure to work. Whereas, like I said, in the case of the Dreamcast, they kind of had the infrastructure to do it. You know, they had their own web service to really put this on its backbone, but didn't really. You know, it would take the Xbox 360 really before it implemented something like that. Although, did the Xbox have that ability where it had games you could download and play through there? I don't remember. I didn't have one.
I don't remember either. But like the Xbox Online it's not like 360 or Xbox One. I don't know if you could download things through there.
We're talking about the original Xbox?
Yeah.
I don't think that was even around at that time. I think all they really did was like multiplayer online games, and the hard drive mostly was just used to do game saves or just like save your music on there so you can put that in other games. I think that's what primarily was done. I think it wasn't until Xbox 360s when we started seeing games that you could stream or download.
Fair enough. So yeah, those were the big two features that the Dreamcast brought, the online play, the VMU. If there's one thing I could say about the Dreamcast going into it, and I think you brought it up when you mentioned Quake 3 Arena, the bridge that it caused between the PC and the console market. I think you had that kind of with the PS2. You had some PC ports of games like Diablo and Quake and things like that, but I think really the Dreamcast was really the first game to set the standard for that bridge between PC and console kind of being connected more. You know, you had games being ported over from the Dreamcast from the PC to the Dreamcast that a lot of people probably would have never seen otherwise, like Unreal Tournament, like Quake 3 Arena. You had some adventure titles like the Omicron the Nomad Soul, and I forget what the game is, but it's a game where you play as a guy with a dragon. I remember they made fun of it on X-Play, but I remember that was a PC port. That was a port from the PC. You know, you had all these games that were being brought over from the PC. It seemed like that was going to kickstart the whole the connection between the two, which, as we've seen now, is kind of not really much of a gap. What are your thoughts on that? Kind of the Dreamcast bridging that PC console gap as early as it did.
It definitely did that, because, I mean, it was powered by, like, Windows.
Yes, it was. There were a couple games that supported it. Not as many, but there were those that did support Windows CE at the time. No, anybody else got anything to add about that? Braden?
Not really, other than it did nothing but increase from there ever since.
It's funny that people still bring that up, though, because, like, if you play Crazy Taxi on Dreamcast versus the arcade, aren't they identical?
Yes.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
So it's
that was one of the things that attracted me so much to the Dreamcast. It was pretty much a console arcade.
Yeah, right. But it's like, so it's funny that, like, it bridged the gap between one thing and people are still going to compare it. Like, I mean, it can't fucking do everything, you know? It's like, next thing you're going to be like, oh, that doesn't wipe your ass? It sucks. Throw that out. Whatever.
Oh, man. But yeah, a lot of games that were out in the arcades found a nice little home on the Dreamcast, and they were pretty much arcade perfect.
Yeah, Sega's always had that when it comes to their consoles. I mean, that was a big selling point on the Genesis, was their arcade ports at that time. You kind of saw that with the Dreamcast in terms of, like, the PC ports.
Yeah, great. Because, like, even back then on the Genesis days, I mean, it wasn't like 100% arcade perfect. But I remember when Strider came out on the Genesis and how beautiful that looked and how it compared to the arcade version. I mean, that's actually true, that Sega's always done something to make sure that the home version of an arcade game was as close as an arcade experience as you could get. And I think that really shined, especially on the Dreamcast.
Yeah, I mean, look at, Marvel vs. Capcom and, like, Soul Calibur. I mean, Soul Calibur's pretty much arcade perfect. And all those freaking light-up games, all the light gun games, like freaking House of the Dead and, oh man, Typing of the Dead was even cool on the Dreamcast.
Oh my god, Typing of the Dead is amazing. I love that game.
I personally, I'm kind of sad that my modern TV can't do light gun games, because I'd love nothing more than to pick up a copy of, like, House of the Dead 2 or some of the other ones and just kind of, play those games, but you can't really do them on an LCD screen.
Well, you should definitely pick up House of the Dead Overkill.
Well, I was also going to suggest picking up House of the Dead 2 and 3, because those there's a compilation, so there you go.
I might. I've kind of been hesitant on picking up a PlayStation Move. Like, I kind of wish that they still had...
No, on the Wii. You can get those on the Wii.
I don't have a Wii.
Oh, well then you have butt AIDS.
Oh, jeez.
Burn.
I have a PS3, and they do have House of the Dead Overkill on there.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah, that's right. It was the extended cut, I think is what it's called.
Yeah.
But
Oh, okay, go ahead.
No. I was just going to reiterate. Yeah, if you're needing your House of the Dead 2 fix, I mean, if you don't have a Wii, I mean, you can always get the Wii Mini, which is like $99 now.
They have a Wii Mini now. How much smaller can it get?
That thing. It's $100, but it doesn't have any Wi-Fi, which is the servers are going down anyway, and it can't play GameCube games. But it looks. I don't give a shit what anyone says. It looks awesome. I think it looks kick-ass.
Yeah.
So, how big is it then?
About the
like
size.
The Wii itself isn't really that big of a console to begin with. It's pretty small.
It might be a little smaller, but
it's
a top loader.
Almost.
Take the size of a game disc, right? The Wii game disc. It's about that size.
Oh, wow.
I would honestly, from the pictures I'm looking at right now, I'd say it looks like a mid-90s CD Walkman. Like, it's slightly bigger.
Does it really look like that? I need to take a look at this thing then.
But it's cool because it also comes with Mario Kart. So, hey, I got Mario Kart Wii. That's cool.
Like, no, I know what a better comparison is. The PS1. The late model PS1. I would say it's about on par with that.
I hope it's better quality. I think the later model PS1, the quality of it is shit. Like sometimes, like the door doesn't snap down.
Well, that's...
I had one of those. If we're talking about the mini PS1.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was my introduction to PlayStation. That was my uncle gave it to me, and that's how I kind of got into Sony gaming. But yeah, I can relate to those door issues for sure.
Yeah.
We also should bring up the fact that was actually Sony's big kickback towards the Dreamcast launch. I believe right around the same time they did launch that PS1 redesign. Not only that, but they lowered the price of the PS1 to $99. That was kind of their kickback to the Dreamcast launch, I believe.
But you know what pissed me off? You know what pissed me off about the PS1 was when they were releasing it, they showed so many advertisements of that freaking screen that came with it, and it was sold separately. That pissed me off so much.
Yeah.
I know. I thought that was really cool. I really did. Honestly, I that intrigued me because I remember also seeing ads for a pluggable arcade stick that plugs right into the console itself. It's not wired, like it doesn't have a separate wire to it. It actually plugs into the front of it. So I always thought that combined with the screen made for like a really cool portable like video game console, like a portable cabinet almost. You didn't need the long corded controller. You just kind of had everything all succinct with it. I thought that was pretty neat. But yeah, we're going a bit off topic. So yeah, Dreamcast launched. Oh, what was that?
I said it happens.
It does. It's a Michael Burhan production. Usually that's the case. At least it didn't deviate into dick humor, which is usually what kind of happens when Burhan is hosting.
Well, we can fix that, you know.
No, let's not delve down that road, folks.
It'll feel second rate. It's not coming from his awesome British accent. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Well, I can do a British accent, you know.
You could try.
Well, you know they did have that vibration stick for Res for the Dreamcast.
Yeah, but that was only in Japan, no?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Oh, did you guys say that might be?
Nah. And of course we had Seaman.
Dude, Seaman rules. Seaman rules.
Oh, that actually reminds me of another feature that they brought over, the microphone.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, from Seaman.
I think it was also used for Alien Front Online, which was another thing that they brought. Oh, we'll talk about that in a second, but you had the microphone, which was used for multiplayer as well. You can use it to kind of communicate with people, which you didn't see that in any of the other consoles because they didn't have online. But that does bring up another key feature from talking about the PC stuff, MMOs. They brought over Alien Front Online and Phantasy Star Online.
Yeah, they did.
You didn't see that in any other consoles, and that even into the PS1 era, you really didn't see much with that. So,
oh, you mean PS2 era?
PS2 era, yeah. You didn't really see that aside from like the EverQuest games, which tried, and Final Fantasy XI. By the way, folks, we have 10 minutes left in the show. If you're listening to us live, I don't know if Braden wants to go into the overtime thing. We can kind of go into that. That's usually the case when it comes to it. Braden,
yes.
Are you willing to go overtime?
Yeah, we're going to have to. There's still a bit more that is left out. We need to go into the solid conclusion, which is the downfall of the console, basically what might be considered its spiritual successor, and just kind of wrap it all up into the plug. So we are going to need to go into overtime, which means record the rest of the show post live. So you can follow us there. I do not know the links offhand where you can follow us. I know we posted on Stitcher. It's on Fanboys Anonymous. Miguel probably knows that far better than I do, but we will need to go overtime for this show.
Yeah, Burhan does that. He posts the links all over the place. He posts it on Nerd Genius, Fanboys, things like that. So people will be able to get access to it. Don't worry. Our fearless leader will make sure of that.
Oh, no doubt.
But yeah, MMOs were a big thing, which I was surprised never really caught on after that. You didn't really see many other consoles take advantage of it, aside from obviously EverQuest and Final Fantasy XI. It wouldn't be until this past generation that MMOs would kind of make its way onto the main consoles. By any chance, did any of you guys play those games, Alien Front Online or Phantasy Star?
No.
Actually, Final Fantasy 14 right now is my very first MMO, so I've never played MMOs until last week.
Huh. How about you, Braden?
My MMO expertise lasts to WoW, playing for a few years, then retiring, and then I haven't really picked up another one, though the only one I've really kind of had eyes on is maybe what they're doing with the Elder Scrolls, but I'm pretty recent in terms of that for MMOs, really. I don't have any past experience with them, say from the late 90s through the early 2000s. Pretty recently getting into those now.
Fair enough.
That is fair. Yes.
I just figured I'd bring that up because that is a big part of, obviously bridging the gap and a big selling point also of the Dreamcast. Oh, and by the way, Xander, just to answer your question, yes, it does record. It doesn't stop recording until you hit the end episode button on the dashboard. So
cool.
Once you hit that, then it stops recording. But if you just let it continue on, it'll go right into recording the overtime. So don't worry about it.
Sweet.
So yeah, the console itself launches and it's a hit. It has some pretty solid titles. Something I wanted to actually bring up was its sports titles, and this goes indicative to one of the reasons kind of why the console itself fell was the lack of third-party support. I mean, the big reason why you didn't have many people coming over to the Dreamcast honestly stems from the Saturn. Because of how hard it was to develop for those consoles, a lot of third-party developers were burned by Sega. They did not want to work with them going into the Dreamcast, even though the Dreamcast was a lot easier to code for. They learned their mistakes. But you had companies like EA who did not want to make any console games for there. That's why you notice there's no Madden games. There's no, at the time, the Triple Play series in terms of baseball. You don't see any FIFA games on there from EA. That's why Sega actually had to develop their own sports brand with Sega Sports. You had the 2K series with NFL 2K, NBA 2K, NHL 2K, World Series Baseball 2K. I'll be honest, I haven't played any of the 2K games, although I do want to find a copy of World Series Baseball just because I really like baseball games. But yeah, what are you guys' thoughts on the third-party support for the Dreamcast? Do you think that it really hurt them in the long run?
Yeah, and what's kind of scary about that is it kind of has similar parallels to Nintendo with the Wii U right now, particularly the EA, the lack of support from them as a company to develop for their console. So it shows that even today, companies can kind of maybe burn bridges with other developers for their systems, though I don't know if EA really has ever developed for Nintendo since the Super Nintendo. But
oh yeah, they have.
Yeah, they have. I just can't really recall anything major.
They had many games on the GameCube and whatnot.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I know that they completely cut ties with them for the Wii U. At least that's what I heard, that they don't plan to really develop anything for it. And the fact that they did the same thing with Sega all those years ago, it's kind of a little bit of a frightening parallel. At least they kind of tried to keep the people who, I was never into sports games at all, never really played them, but my brother's a big fan of playing hockey games and all that, so I've seen what they're like. At least they kind of tried to attempt at getting some games developed, whether it was through Sega Sports or the 2K franchise, to kind of appeal to that market, even if they didn't have the most support for it. But if you have strong third-party support for your console, it usually does nothing but help. And I think you have to admit that the lack of that hurt Sega's console quite a bit. I think it's kind of undeniable. Even if it wasn't the main cause of maybe the Dreamcast downfall, it certainly didn't help matters.
Yeah, I mean, looking back on the Dreamcast, as much as I love it, aside from the arcade ports that they had of it and some of the first-party and second-party titles, I can't really name that many big third-party third-party titles overall that really stick out in my mind for the Dreamcast. I mean, Capcom kind of brought games like the Resident Evil franchise with Code Veronica to the console, but, I mean, can any of you guys think of any third-party games that stick out to you on the Dreamcast?
I mean, other than Capcom had such a great relationship with the Dreamcast. And you had all the great fighting games, and you had Power Stone, of course Resident Evil, the Street Fighter games. You had Spawn, freaking Cannon Spike. I mean, Capcom and Dreamcast were really they were the bread and butter of that system.
I think it dates back to their relationship in the arcade, where I think Sega developed the hardware for a lot of arcade cabinets for Capcom. So I think that was pretty much an end result of their long-term relationship. But in terms of third-party support, with the PS1, you can always name games like Metal Gear Solid, like the Final Fantasy games. With the Dreamcast, you really can't think of any big third-party titles that jump out. At least I can't.
Neither can I.
Because at the time, the only three third-party developers I could think of that really developed for the Dreamcast, we already mentioned Capcom, but we also had like Midway, that was another one, and let's see, of course we mentioned Electronic Arts did not. There's this other one.
I don't believe Konami brought anything really massive.
They might have, but there's like maybe just one or two. I mean, there was going to be a Castlevania game that was going to come out for the system, but they scrapped it at the last moment. So, but I did not really see many Konami games at all come out for that system. The other one I was thinking of was Namco. Namco was also pretty big on the Dreamcast. But there was only like the three main third-party developers who had any affiliation with the Dreamcast system at all.
And folks, if you just are tuning in and you haven't heard, we are about to slip into our overtime segment. We do appreciate you guys listening. Hopefully there were some people out there that have been listening. I know Burhan really didn't, I don't think he really went on a blitz to advertise that much, and we didn't throw out any of the call numbers, unfortunately. But we do appreciate you listening, and if you have been listening, stick around, stick with us later in the night or later in the week when Burhan posts up the rest of this. We will be continuing, and we're going to talk about the fall of the Dreamcast. So for those of us here at Retro Unlimited and I Got Gameplay, we bid you a temporary adieu. And now we're heading into the overtime segment right now, as I'm seeing on here. So, okay, we're still on technically. All right, maybe I was
for a couple of seconds.
One of the Konami games for the Dreamcast was the Grinch game. LOL.
Oh wow, the Grinch.
How does that shit taste?
Oh man,
nutty.
That tastes like bitterness.
Fucking nutty.
A little bit of corn.
Yeah.
They also did Nightmare Creatures too.
Oh yeah.
I like the first
Air
one.
Force Delta, wasn't that a launch game?
Yeah, Air Force Delta was on there. Yeah, I'm looking at the list. I'm on a website that has the list of the Dreamcast titles on it.
And Silent Scope.
Yeah, that game.
They definitely did something.
They did, but like I said,
I wouldn't write that on my resume to go to work anywhere.
Who developed that game? That game, I believe somebody famous developed that game. I just don't know who.
Artificial Minded Movement developed it.
Okay, so no one. All right.
I just remembered that I got that game as a Christmas present one year. Oh, it still hurts.
Why? What was so bad about it?
It was... Okay, remember that game Shrek when it came out for the Xbox?
No, but Kyla and I were talking about it the other day because she was going through her Xbox collection. I was like, I think Travis bought that the day it came out. You did, right?
I did.
Yeah, you bought it on launch. Well, what was better? I'm guessing Shrek.
I think Shrek was a little bit better than the Grinch.
I remember Shrek.
But that's not saying much.
Yeah, I remember Shrek was a big part of their advertising when the Xbox came out.
Yeah.
They really were behind that. I mean, keep in mind, the Shrek movie was one of the biggest hits of that year, so they were really behind that as being like, this is going to be the console's defining platformer. And
they're both green. I guess that kind of worked out too, marketing-wise.
But yeah.
Xbox would have been coming out when that movie first hit theaters.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what
around
he's
the same time.
But yeah, I mean, like I said, I'm looking on this list of games for the Dreamcast. I can't think of one third-party game that really sticks out to me. So yeah, that was one of the big problems with it, was the third-party support.
Yeah, but I think they did a good job with keeping it in-house. Like, I've never heard anyone say any bad things about the sports games that are on that system.
I know, but it kind of is the same problem I think Nintendo had around the same time with the N64, and very much more with the GameCube, to where you just didn't have enough third-party support. I mean, yeah, the first-party titles were there, but if you're not a big fan of the style of Sega's game development, you know, which they very much have a very Japanese style to them, then I could see how that might be a bit of a turnoff, you know. If it doesn't have the games that could appeal to the masses.
Right. Yeah, I hear you.
But yeah, there are a few other games to mention on there. One game I want to mention, obviously, isn't Blue Stinger, for those of you who are going to say something about that. But one game that I think is worth mentioning during the lifespan of the Dreamcast is Shenmue, which I think is not only worth mentioning not just because of how good of a game it is, but a lot of people forget it was a massive bomb for the Dreamcast. I mean, it was in the top 3 of sold games for the Dreamcast, but basically the reason that it bombed was it started out as a Saturn port. It was going to be made for the Saturn. It was actually going to come out around 98, but then they cut the development for it because the console was pretty much dead by that point. So they moved it over to the Dreamcast. And because of that, I think that at the time, Shenmue held the record for most expensive development for a video game. I think it cost like $40 million to develop.
Damn.
Yeah, which was big even for like a big budget movie. So even if it sold well, and it did sell well technically, there was no way that game was going to make any of its money back. I mean, I think literally analysts said that you'd have to sell 2 copies for every single Dreamcast out on the market in order for it to recoup
get the money back that it took to make it. Right?
Yeah.
That's a lot of money behind a game, especially for that time too.
Yeah, and that was a big bust for Sega. That was a huge loss for them. But yeah, I guess it's pretty apt from there to go into probably the start of the fall of the Dreamcast, which I think we can all agree was the launch of the PS2. I mean, the PS2 came out pretty much ate its lunch.
I wanted to bring that up. Can I say one thing about that?
Yeah, go ahead.
The thing that I respect so much about Sony is that they won't only so Sony knew that people were going to want to play DVDs in their system. So you could buy a PS2 and play a DVD straight up right out of the box. Xbox, you had to buy that stupid ass remote thing, and then Dreamcast didn't offer anything, and GameCube obviously didn't offer anything. But then I know this is going off topic, but look at PS3. Blu-ray player out of the box, then Sony is the one funding Blu-rays. So it's like you're buying Sony shit to buy Sony shit. So it's like I give them, they deserve to win because they are looking business-wise and every other way-wise to the future, to people invest in their company through shit like Blu-rays and DVDs. So, Dreamcast, that's one of the reasons they lost. I remember when someone was like, yo, go buy a GameCube. I was like, that can't. I mean, back in the day, I was like, that doesn't even play DVDs. Why won't you just buy the PS2? You can, play DVDs on that thing. And so that's a big selling point. And they, I don't know, didn't do anything about it.
Well, we'll get back into that in a second. I just want to go back to what you mentioned about that. I actually think that was a big risk that Sony took with Blu-ray because at the time you had HD DVD coming out, and for a while it seemed like that pretty much was going to take off.
You know what they say, high risk, high reward, baby. That's how it rolls.
Yes, especially when you consider just how expensive that console was. I mean, they put a lot of effort into that, whereas in the case of what you talked about with the PS2 and the Dreamcast, the PS2 came out right when DVDs were just about to come out. You had movies like, I remember the first movie I saw on my PS2 was actually Shrek. It came out right around the same time on DVD. You had that, you had the Matrix movies coming out at the time. DVDs were really starting to hit huge. And Sony really, really capitalized on that with the PS2 in terms of being the cheapest DVD player out there. I mean, a lot of people forget that DVD players at one point were still like $300 by the time that came out. And here comes Sony with a relatively inexpensive DVD player that really did sell a lot of people on it, and it pretty much ate the Dreamcast lunch at that point.
Oh, absolutely, without a doubt.
I do want to point out, though, that the Dreamcast does have media support. If you have VCDs, which were video CDs that they had at the time, it was not, trust me, if you don't know what they are, don't worry, it wasn't really a thing over here. You could technically play movies on your Dreamcast.
Oh, yeah, I remember that too, yeah. I mean, it wasn't the highest quality, but it still worked.
Yeah, VCD they were really big in, Asia. I know that. You can get a lot of, bootlegs.
Yeah, well, they're still big in a lot of other countries. I know in Africa they're still huge because of just how inexpensive they are. VCRs and VHS tapes are so expensive to produce, but VCDs are just CDs. They're relatively inexpensive. Same thing with the players. But VCD, like I said, there was no way it was going to really capitalize on that here in America, just because VHS was still the big hoopla at the time. So I can't say that it doesn't have any support. It did. It just no one really made anything for it. But yeah.
Well,
go ahead.
Well, I was going to say too, while we're talking about VCDs, and of course, one of the things about the Dreamcast that some people really like about it is the fact that, and it was probably it was definitely a downfall for the system, was bootlegs. It was really easy to copy games for your Dreamcast.
Yeah, they tried to make it hard by coming up with their own format, the GD-ROMs. But, I mean, aside from some, clipping you have to do with the code of the Dreamcast games, you could essentially burn a Dreamcast game onto a CD and play it. I haven't tried, though, because I'm never gotten it to work, but I know some people out there who...
Oh, I have. I have a couple of burnt Dreamcast CDs, I'm not going to lie.
You know what's funny? I went to a computer show a couple years ago, and a guy there was selling a Dreamcast emulator pack. It was like a CD with all the. It was like a pack of CDs with all the Dreamcast ROMs downloaded onto them, and they were like, it was really expensive. It was like $70. I'm like, why is the Dreamcast? He had other emulators that were like $20 and everything, but this one was like $70. I'm like, why are you pricing the Dreamcast emulators at $70? And I'm like, well, because you could rip the emulators off of the CD and put them onto actual CDs and play them on your Dreamcast, which I was blown away at, because I'm like, you could actually make your own official CDs for the console? Like, yeah.
Yeah, I have a Sega Master System disc for my Dreamcast. It's got over 1,000 games on it. It's got every Sega Master System game, including some of the bootleg games that came out in South America.
Ooh, I gotta find one of that for the Genesis. I would love to play Genesis.
I'll have to send you some hookups later.
Oh, definitely. Hook me up, bro. But yeah, that was a big problem, was emulation. I mean, even back then, people figured out how to copy their own games onto there. I mean, that's kind of a good thing nowadays, especially with people wanting to play games on their Dreamcast and just there not really being many. I mean, I go to flea markets all the time, and I rarely see Dreamcast games on the shelves. You'll see NES and Genesis and stuff, but very rarely you might see one or two Dreamcast games floating around. They're really hard to find nowadays, especially now that collecting has become huge.
Yeah, collecting is through the fucking roof.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, anybody got anything they want to say about the PS2 basically eating the lunch of the Dreamcast?
I think it's pretty much the main reason for it was mentioned.
Yeah.
PS2 won over many consoles, mainly because of their DVD support. Things like the Dreamcast and GameCube didn't really have a shot at all.
Yeah, I remember hearing about when I heard about the VMU2 launch that they were going to have. I remember that there were plans at one point to release a Dreamcast DVD add-on similar to the Sega CD, where it connects right to your Dreamcast and you can play DVDs through it.
That's going down the same road as they went before. It's like all these add-ons are bullshit. It's like I respect the fact that people allow them leave expansion ports, but it's this other bullshit that you made the Dreamcast without DVD support. You're not going to win, because even if someone buys the Dreamcast, they still have to buy the DVD thing. It's like you look at Xbox 360, you still have to buy the HD DVD thing. Pack it in or forget about it. Just move on, because it's too much shit. It's buy the Genesis, buy the Sega CD, buy the 32X, buy a game that needs the Sega CD and the 32X and the Genesis. It's too much bullshit.
Yeah, that is something. I should really pitch that to Burhan, an add-on episode.
Oh yeah, that'd be good.
Sega would be half the episode.
Oh yeah, I'd have fun talking about that. But yeah, like I said, they were going to come out with their own DVD player for it. I don't know if that would have really continued its success or anything like that. And then we have to talk about one of the things that I mentioned, the big connection between Sega and its kind of spiritual predecessor,
the Xbox.
Was a certain person coming in and basically pulling the plug on it. Do you know who that person is?
I do not recall.
Peter Moore.
Oh.
You guys remember him? Old tattoo arms?
Yeah, I just remember he had a goatee and he was like balding.
Yeah.
That's all I remember.
For those of you who don't remember Peter Moore, he started out as the president of Sega of America. He took over, I would say, towards the end of the Dreamcast launch, and for better or worse, he was the guy that basically pulled the plug on it. He came in, saw that the PS2 was killing the Dreamcast, and basically was the one that put out the order that as of early 2002, Dreamcast was done. I think it was late 2001 even, because by then I think they still had NHL 2K2 coming out. They had a bunch of other titles that were already in the can. But yeah, Peter Moore basically came in and killed the Dreamcast. I remember somebody even said on I'm reading the Wikipedia page, he actually at one point some people at like airports were actually accosting him about that he was the guy that it was revealed that he was actually the one that actually killed the Dreamcast. So he got a lot of flack for that, and it's funny, worth mentioning that, because this is the same guy that would go on to be kind of the production head for the Microsoft Xbox. In fact, I think he was one of the big reasons that he was one of the people that actually caused the deal between Sega and Xbox and Microsoft for the Xbox.
Well, I mean, I can see why so many people are pissed off. It's like you look at something like the Nintendo with a Super Nintendo, or even the PS1, or in the Neo Geo. It's like the length of the system for how long games were made is huge. The window is gigantic. You look at Saturn from beginning to end, Sega CD beginning to end, 32X beginning to end. You look at Dreamcast beginning to end, and it's just like, forget even the system failing. Forget the system going away. The fact that it's dead and like they're saying like, you know, no one's making things for it anymore. You know, you're going to get pissed because you just paid all this money. Even if it's 2 years before, you paid all this money, and now nothing is coming out for it anymore. It's bullshit. You know, it's like you have. That's one reason you have to admire Sony. The PS1, the life cycle of that is years. It's well over a decade. You know, it's like 16 years or something. You know, PS2 is 10 years, 12 years, something like that. You know, so it's like, how can you compare that to 2 years? Anyone would be pissed. You know.
I think it was unfair that they went out of business so early, because if you look at some of the titles that were available for it, they still had a bunch of key titles planned to come out at the time. Soul Reaver 2 was a big title that was coming out for it. I remember that was just about to come out before they pulled the plug on it. That was one of those in-the-can games. Half-Life was in the can before they pulled the plug, and then they didn't bring it over. One game that I actually heard did come out overseas that never made it to the U.S. was a game by the name of Headhunter, which I remember a lot of people saying was going to be their version of Metal Gear Solid, which I would love to get a PAL copy of that and play it over here. I know it's out for the PS2, but I want to get that genuine Dreamcast experience playing it.
Yeah.
You have other titles. One specific title that I'm shocked was actually in development for it. Do you know what big title was actually going to come out for the Dreamcast before it got moved over?
Performance Gym. Toe Jam Earl 3.
That was one that got moved over to the Xbox. A fair amount of games that were originally planned for them got moved over, but I'll talk about that in a bit.
Was it anything by Valve?
Halo.
Really?
Oh yeah.
Halo was in development for the Dreamcast before it got moved over. In fact, when Microsoft cut the deal with Sega, I think they helped them bring that over there. But they kind of cut it. I think it was they helped out. No, Bungie got bought up by Microsoft at the time. But yeah, I remember Halo at one point was in development for the Dreamcast. Can you imagine if that game had actually been released? I mean, it was only, I believe it was still within the same time frame. I believe that game came out.
I think what happened is if that game were to have come out on the Dreamcast even before it got plugged, considering how little support the Dreamcast had, and had the PS2 out at that time, I'm willing to bet the Halo series wouldn't have gone past beyond that game.
To be fair, yeah. I mean, Microsoft really put a lot of its marketing muscle and budget behind marketing Halo. So it's hard to say if it would have been a big hit, but, hindsight being 2020, to know that fact that a game that famous had its start on the Dreamcast before it was ported over to the Xbox is a pretty big deal. Go ahead.
And it was basically ported over to what many people say was really the spiritual successor in terms of, as we probably mentioned, a lot of the different functions that the Xbox picked up were originally kind of tested out with the Dreamcast, including their Xbox Live support.
Yeah.
Like it kind of all based around what Sega was doing, or at least tried to do with the dial-up internet that they had done. Like the whole model for that console really seemed like it took its basis from what the Dreamcast was really trying to start, which in terms of its legacy kind of spawned where the direction of gaming would go from there, which is interesting to think about for a console that wasn't really around all that long.
I completely agree. I mean, you look at the Xbox, I mean, you can tell that, honestly, if you just shrink the size down maybe like 50% and paint it white, you can easily see the Xbox is kind of like in the same vein style-wise as the Dreamcast. I mean, even down to the controllers. Even though that big, huge Duke controller that came out was kind of cumbersome, I could see where they were coming from with that when you compare it to the Sega Dreamcast.
Absolutely.
And I think that also goes into Sega wanting. I believe that Microsoft actually had a deal with Sega at the time to help them kind of penetrate the.
Penetrate.
They helped them to get into the Japanese market, because that was a big problem with the original Xbox when they first came out, was they did not have any coverage over in Japan. I mean, they still didn't, even towards the end of that run. So I think that's why they partnered with Sega to bring over games like Toe Jam and Earl, like Panzer Dragoon was a big get. I don't know if Dragoon was going to be ported to the Dreamcast or not, but that was a big get for them. Shenmue 2 was a big get for them as well. They really wanted Sega to help bring their influence over to them, to the Japanese market. I don't know how successful it was in the long term, like I said, but I think that's a neat thing that Peter Moore basically used his connections to kind of keep Sega alive in some ways.
It's a very interesting legacy that the console has held since its downfall. Like, it's really, really revered, especially over a decade later. That really, if you think about it, completely, it was their best console since the Genesis, and who knows really if it could have lasted longer, what kind of a better legacy it could have left. Like, really, kind of the Genesis gets revered as like Sega's, probably because it did the best business and was the debut of Sonic, as their best contribution to a gaming generation. But I really think the Dreamcast at least has to be looked at as upon one of their best achievements, even if it didn't last too long. Because really, it's left quite an interesting legacy.
Yeah, no, I agree. But
hold on, I just have to say this. And better late than never, I believe. Is this Fearless Leader?
Yes, it is. Sorry about that, guys. My phone died, so I wasn't able to sort of jump on sooner. So
ladies and gentlemen, Michael Burhan, the original host of I Got Gameplay. We're kind of tying up the end of the podcast here. But before we do that, would you like to talk about the Dreamcast system in general? Kind of throw your hat into the ring?
Yeah, sure. My first experience with the Dreamcast was actually quite fun. I remember in my house there's this weird sort of divide going on between console lovers. My brother Hassan decided to move to the N64 and stay with Nintendo. My other brother, Con Long, basically decided to move over to the PlayStation. But before he moved over to the PS2, he decided to purchase a Dreamcast. Now, he purchased a little thing, had that little VMU thing, and he had a Sonic, I believe it was Sonic Adventure 2 on that console. And with the VMU thing, it was great because on an age where little pocket monsters and stuff like that was still a big hot issue, you could download these little chibis, I believe they were called, or Cheos. That was it.
Chocobos.
No,
Chows. I'm thinking of the Final Fantasy one.
Straight onto these little things, you could raise it and stuff like that. So I used to take it into college with me and stuff. And I played everything from like Crazy Taxi to the Street Fighter versus Marvel versus Capcom and stuff like that. And it was great. It was a very enjoyable console. It was way ahead of its time. You know, games like Typing of the Dead, for instance. It made a very special sort of mark for Sega. Me being a Nintendo fan by myself as well, it was one of those things where I couldn't really put this thing down. It was a great sort of addictive console and something that was very, very next gen, and it kind of gave birth to what we now see as Xbox Live and PSN, you know, PlayStation Network,
yes.
and it allowed like other companies to go into sort of more disc-based systems, and it brought out a lot more. I think the biggest problem with Sega though was they kind of killed themselves off before this console was released. You know, they made a very negative mark on their fans and gave a very negative kind of stigma towards their company because of the numerous transplants and stuff. And this wasn't, and I want to make this quite clear as well, this wasn't Sega of Japan, this was Sega of America that did this. You know, the 32X was their brainchild. The Sega Saturn, for all that it was worth, was supposed to be the main focus of the company, but they just wanted to, you know, bring out some more cool new tech. And because people, including third-party developers, got fed up with Sega releasing a console and then discontinuing it, releasing it and then discontinuing it, the Dreamcast was never given that fair shake, which it should have.
Yeah, we mentioned the lack of third-party support and really the third-party key titles that they really never had.
Yeah.
I do have a question for you since you are living over in the UK. Have you played a game on the Dreamcast by the name of Headhunter?
No, I have not.
I mentioned it before. We were talking about the post-Dreamcast era, and we mentioned like some of the games that didn't come out for it. And I'd mentioned it because I know the game's out for the PS2 here in America, but in the States, you guys got that game on the Dreamcast, and from what I've heard from people, it's kind of, a lot of people compare it as like the Dreamcast equivalent to like Metal Gear Solid. It's kind of a stealth action-based game and things like that, so I was just wondering if you played it over there since it did get a PAL release.
I'm trying to figure out the whole sort of reasoning behind that. I believe one of the last games we got was sort of like a Resident Evil type of clone.
That might have been Headhunter. It might have had like Resident Evil with Metal Gear Solid elements. I'd have to check that out. Yeah,
it was one of those games where I wouldn't really call it a clone per se because it had its own identity at the same time, but it was a game that looked really kind of unpolished in a sense. And, you know, but you could have actually gotten it over in the States as well because there was no really any region lock on the Dreamcast itself, and also you could copy games like a bitch on there because the data and I believe it was like the process, it didn't have like a main sort of functioning graphical processor. That was all based on the disc.
Yeah, we mentioned that when it comes to emulation, how easy it was even back in the days to copy games over to it, which really did hurt the system in a way.
Yeah, it did. And I think as a console itself, it was a very unique approach. Sega had something with it. I think in general, the console could have lasted a heck of a lot longer, but they kind of bailed on it before the console could catch on. It's like basically Nintendo cutting the Wii U, the Wii U's legs from under it before the Wii U has an opportunity to see Super Mario Kart 8 or the new Super Smash Bros. Title.
Well, we literally just mentioned who that was. I don't know if you're familiar with Peter Moore. Who
then jumped ship to Microsoft.
Yeah, he was basically the one that is on record basically having killed, when he took over Sega of America midway during the Dreamcast launch, he basically, after the PS2 launch, pulled the plug on the system. And we were talking about some of the games that were planned for it, games like Soul Reaver 2, Half-Life, Halo. Halo was actually in development for the Dreamcast at one point before it got moved over. So you see a lot of those games that could have come out. I wonder if it had lasted another year, what titles would have come to it, because I've seen games like Panzer Dragoon Orta that came out at the time. Toe Jam and Earl, obviously, I know was in development for it.
Well, they found a dev kit version of it, didn't they?
They did,
I believe so, yeah. One game that you cannot convince me was originally meant for the Dreamcast is Shinobi. Like, I look at that game and the way it plays and stuff, and I'm like, this was made for the Dreamcast. Just the way the levels are designed, like, it feels like a game that was made for the previous console generation. Not that it's a bad game.
Oh, well, we were just basically going to end it. I mean, I can't think of anything else. I mean, you look at the post-Dreamcast era of Sega, and they basically became kind of a third-party developer. I mean, you saw
it's
Sonic...
practically their place.
Yeah, and to be honest, in terms of Sega, I think in the last few years they've kind of, in a way, lost their identity. I mean, they've kind of become just a regular developer now. Not even a developer. They're mostly a publisher now. They pick up a lot of licenses and things like that, and just kind of farm it out to everybody else. I mean, there are maybe a handful of Sega titles out there that still kind of retain that Sega feel, but you really don't see that many anymore.
Yeah, it's as I said, it was a big originator for Sega. As a company itself, it could have gone the distance, and it's a shame that they cut the legs out from under it. But I had the discussion with Robman about this previously as well, because when he was on Desert Island Games, he talked a little bit about why Sega decided to go that direction and then just basically go into console game manufacturers to the consoles. And they basically were on the verge of bankruptcy if they kept making consoles and making games for these specific consoles. They had to find a way out, and it was a shame. Did they make the right move? Yes, they did. And I'm always going to attest to that they made the right move, because now Sega isn't so far in the bloody black, it's impossible. They could make another console now if they wanted to, just based on the sheer fact that Sega is making a lot of money. But as a fan of the Dreamcast, it went too soon. So, but hey, at least you can buy mod kits and actually mod certain games for it. Because my brother actually tested a kit that he had that allowed him to take a game that he was playing on the PlayStation 1 and modded it over to the Dreamcast.
Yeah, the Bleem. Yeah, the Bleem.
Yeah, it was.
I'm just more.
Yeah, go on, Ray.
I was just going to say, I'm just more surprised that in a span that lasted pretty well just a little bit over 2 years, Sega's last console practically, in a way, dictated basically set the bar for consoles after it and kind of led the direction for where video games would go after the Dreamcast, like originating the online market, different sorts of connectivity, and just having players play together, which would become so big over the next 2 to 3 generations afterward. To believe it really kind of started and built a niche here on this console that didn't really even last all that long, unless you want to count it like selling in Japan all the way until 2007, which I found pretty surprising that it lasted that long. But yeah, the console itself wasn't really around for that long.
I remember reading an article a couple of years ago where, you know how they'll have like charts about what games sell on what consoles. They'll come out with like a monthly report. Mm-hmm. I remember one year they actually had one where, like, towards the bottom of the list, they actually had a Dreamcast title. Like, somebody had sold like a copy of like World Series Baseball for like the Dreamcast, like one copy, and it somehow charted on the charts. So for like one time in like 2006 or 7. You had a Dreamcast game put on the sales charts, which I thought was pretty funny.
Yeah, it sold for a while in Japan even after it discontinued. I guess there's just so many made. I just found it a little surprising that it sold all the way up until just like 7 years ago, when pretty well after it got discontinued in early 2001. I don't know, did it continue to sell here at all? I don't think it did.
It wasn't even selling when it was still available. Like I said, when the PS2 first came out, it pretty much sales stopped. I mean, I remember that they said that specifically on the
went to a dead halt.
Yeah. Basically, they were trying to get rid of consoles. I mean, I remember at GameStop, they were mentioning how they were selling Dreamcast for like $50 2 years into its console span, which is insane.
Yeah.
You know, they could not get rid of it. The PS2 ate its lunch. You know, I keep saying that, but it's true.
Yeah, but also
so
the PS2
Dreamcast
offered
and came basically from Sony jumping in with their brand new console and DVD scheme. Unfortunately.
Well,
for
the
the
thing is
Dreamcast,
as well,
anyway.
if you think about it, the reason why the PS2 ate its lunch is because the fact is the console had something that the Dreamcast didn't. It played DVD discs. It's not a big thing.
That was
but,
all it needed.
Yeah. And that's the funny sort of niche thing that Sony manages to do. It's like with the PS3, when people compared the PS3 to the Xbox 360, most of the people made their choice based on the fact that the PS3 plays Blu-rays.
Not initially. I'll give them credit that it took a while for Blu-rays to really catch on. Mostly it was due to the fact that HD DVD kind of dumped itself out when it started losing exclusivity with a lot of companies. Like, I remember when when Blockbuster announced that they had stopped supporting HD DVDs, and then you had Universal, who had originally, was exclusive to HD DVD when they came over. I mean, it took HD DVD to basically jump out of the market before Blu-ray really took over, which always made me wonder, had the Xbox 360 supported HD DVD out of the gate, I wonder if that format would have sold out over Blu-ray. If the Xbox
I'm not going to say it would. I'm not going to say it would have sold out over Blu-ray, but I'll tell you, they would still both be going right now. It'd be like, I don't know, like I'm just saying, if Xbox 360 had an HD DVD player built in, then they would have sold their amount of things in HD DVD. I remember when I lived in California, I'd go to Fry's, and I remember they were clearancing out HD DVD shit because no one was buying it, and there was just walls of it. I mean, I remember The Big Lebowski was one of them, so they had plenty of movies that were on HD DVD, and then there was the whole Blu-ray section that was flourishing. If they had done it, it would still be going neck and neck, and the Xbox One would have come out with an HD DVD player instead of a Blu-ray player, and it would have still been going. But they just suck too many dicks over there, and they need the idea of money now. Like, they don't want to see money over like the period of 20 years. They want money right this second now, and we want to see it, and that's why they lose. And fuck Xbox. You guys know how I feel about Xbox, so screw them.
Amen.
Yeah, and that's one thing as well. That HD DVD adapter they did for it cost nearly half as much as the console at the time.
HD DVD was actually less expensive to produce than Blu-ray.
Yeah. And they basically put the add-on on there and said, if you want to play HD DVDs, you can do with this adapter. And I wasn't going to buy something like that. I'd rather play just the normal discs that the Xbox 360 had instead of basically taking that leap. And it's exactly what Zach said. It's basically trying to milk as much as they could out the consumer. So, fuck it.
It's unfortunate because, like I said, there were a lot of exclusives for HD DVD, especially when they signed the deal with Universal. I mean, I remember they made a big deal out of it when Transformers hit HD DVD.
Yeah, I remember
months before Blu-ray did. I mean, that was a big sell for them.
You can tell a company knows when they fucked up when the next system has the opposition's idea installed in theirs. So you can tell that Microsoft and Xbox knew they messed up when the Xbox One came with a Blu-ray player.
Yeah.
Xbox One can play Blu-rays?
Yes.
Oh, okay, I thought it did, yeah.
Oh wow, I actually did not know that. I'm actually really surprised.
Yeah, there's no, yeah.
Don't be.
No, I remember what you're saying, because I remember I went to Fry's and I saw like Transformers was out on HD DVD like way before Blu-ray. But that's the thing, it's just like they're too big of cocksuckers to be like, hey, let me like here's the thing. Because even though the PS3 costs a lot of money, Sony lost money on that console for years.
Yes.
But they look to the future and they say, you know what? Eventually this will turn around. And like I said, like Sony does this thing where they say, we're not only going to sell you a console, we're going to sell you a console that plays Blu-ray, and we're going to fucking make Blu-ray so that when you buy our console, you buy our Blu-ray. So you're just buying our shit. So we're making you buy more of our shit. Xbox instead goes, we're not going to make it. We're going to have like Toshiba make this, so then we'll put an add-on, so blah blah blah, and we suck balls and everything sucks ass. They're not willing to lose a little money to make money. And that's where they lose. That's where they fucking fail.
Yeah. To be fair, though, I will kind of fight you on that because the original Xbox, did lose money on them. They did not make a profit on just the sales of the Xbox, the original one. They actually lost a lot of money on that, but because they're Microsoft, they could take the hit. It was mostly through their game developing studios that they managed to break even on that. But
that was also their introduction into the game market. Everybody else at that time that came out in that era, Dreamcast, GameCube, Xbox, and PlayStation 2, had already been in their one generation at least before. So it's like you're going to lose. That's like anybody going into anything right now. You're going to lose, until you can develop that fan base and develop that gung-ho group of people. You're going to lose a little bit of money. The problem is they weren't willing to lose it in the right areas. It's like, why didn't they fucking put the HDD DVD player in their thing? I don't know. It's just bullshit. They deserve, to have lost everything they lost, and I'm happy that they have now succumbed to Sony's shit because they deserve it. They're assholes.
I'm still surprised that even now with the Wii U, that Nintendo still refuses to support DVDs.
Yeah,
I was actually surprised when the Wii came out, and I was like, okay, you've got discs that are DVD sized, and yet you still can't play DVDs. I can understand with the GameCube because they chose to go with the very smaller microscopic discs, but you'd think by the time the Wii and especially the Wii U that it would still have to be...
especially 2 generations now.
Yeah.
Like the Wii is still kind of puzzling, but with the Wii U it's like, okay. Anytime now, guys.
I want to play devil's advocate with this. Here's the thing, and I said this before in the show, is when I buy a system, I'm not really in the market to buying a video player. I buy a video game system to do just that, just play video games. And I think that's something that some people have kind of missed the point when it comes to these home consoles. Is, it's great to have a system that plays Blu-rays and all that stuff. That's great and all. But at the end of the day, I just want something to play video games on. And that's the main thing. And I think it's what Nintendo has always been about is, even though now you can download an app, you can download like Netflix, Hulu Plus, or Amazon Prime, whatever their service is called, where you can stream movies onto the system. Okay, that's fine and all. But at the same point, I really don't care that I can't play DVDs or anything on it. I just want a system I can play video games on, period.
I just think having like something like that's an added bonus. I think everybody really buys for the games.
For the price that they sell these consoles nowadays, you do expect a little bit more if they can do it. Just having a video game player for what you're paying for, I don't know if that you can really do that nowadays. Back in the day when you really couldn't do much with it was nice, but when you can have a console that plays DVDs like the PS2 has established, to see a console come out that doesn't, it really just seems like you're kind of losing out on your price to purchase.
Yeah, well, that even starts with PlayStation 1, where PS1 and Saturn both played CDs.
Yeah, that was actually a big selling point.
Or maybe Nintendo just figures that with all the consoles that have come out already, everybody owns at least 400 DVD players in a home. So they figure they don't have to put one in a console.
And a partridge in a pear tree.
But yes, anybody else have any lasting memories and or thoughts about Sega's last hurrah in the gaming market, which was the Dreamcast, before we move on to the plugs?
I would have liked to... Oh, okay.
Well, I was going to say one last thing, and I was going to keep it short and sweet, but of course there's still developers that are keeping the dream alive with... Dreamcast homebrews. They're still making games for the Dreamcast. So even though we're talking about its demise, it's still alive and kicking. You just gotta join a couple of communities and find out what games like Pure Solar, Gunlord, Strumwind, and just so many other kind of hacks that came out over the years, but in just full-fledged games. So definitely check those out.
And the great thing about it as well is they're easily found, and you can easily burn them onto disc, so you can actually play them in the future. So it's not a big, huge deal. And it's the same thing that most people are doing to prolong the life of the ColecoVision or the NES or the SNES and stuff. but it's sort of easier and more accessible because they just dump these files on the net, and all you got to do is just basically burn them. So yeah, it does have more of a lifespan, but the one thing I will say at this point in time is, just like any other console, it was one of those that was an innovator, and it was something that purely could have been great if it weren't for Sega pulling the plug on it too early.
Yeah, I agree. I think the system could have used another year. I think there were a lot more games on the horizon that really could have taken advantage of the Dreamcast. It's hard to say, though, because with Xbox coming in, with all the muscle that Microsoft brought into it, as much as I would have liked to have seen them continue with it, I really do doubt that they would have been a distant number 4, and I don't know what that would have done for Sega in the long run. They might have just been completely taken out of the business altogether, which I really would not have liked to have seen. I think we still need Sega around.
There could have been a way where they could have just gone with their whole game developing thing and still supported the console. They wouldn't have been making any losses on that because they'll just have been making games for it like they make games for any other console. But they decided against that and just to can it all together. So, as I said, it's not really anything new, and it's one of those things where, as a company, Sega made the right choice. But again, I really wish that they would have actually kept a hold of the console, because I'm a big fan.
Same here. I think we're all fans here and there. We all have a deep respect and a love for the console itself.
Yes.
Anybody else got anything they want to say about the Dreamcast?
It's thinking.
That's actually something I wish we would have done. I thought about it doing it earlier, but I would have loved to have downloaded one of the promos for the Dreamcast, or even start off the show with that little sound that the Dreamcast makes when you boot it up.
Yeah.
This is a neat little thing. It's called editing.
Yeah. But you would have had to have introduced it and stuff. Maybe Burhan will do that. We'll see. He's going to have to edit this last bit that we're doing into the show.
But in terms of the last thing I want to say about the Dreamcast is, it definitely has quite the legacy, and I was really shocked and saddened when it was announced that the system was being canceled and everything, and it has so much promise, and it's hard. It's like one of the biggest heartbreaks in gaming history, I think.
No, I agree with Travis on that one. It is one of the biggest heartbreaks in the industry, but still, in the end, as I said, we've now got Sega as a permanent console developer. We get to see loads of Dream games coming out, including a recent one that they actually had with Sonic the Lost World and their partnership with Nintendo. They're developing more Nintendo-type games. Hell, they developed an awesome F-Zero game for the Nintendo GameCube. Who ever thought that Sega would have their hands on Nintendo property?
And almost become like a glorified second party at this point, at least for Sonic titles.
Yeah, Sonic Boom looks really good.
Yeah, it does. It looks amazing.
Yeah, but I still can't wrap my head around how Knuckles looks, though.
I say this though, from what I've seen of Sonic Boom, this is going to be pretty much Sonic Adventure 3.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Plus the fact that Knuckles is on roids.
Well, let's hope that the game does better than the 2006 iteration of Sonic the Hedgehog, because they pumped up that one like crazy, and we all know what happened with that.
Yeah, but that was because of scheduling conflicts and idiots trying to push it further and further out there before it was supposed to come out. The game was glitchy and buggy as hell. They added fucking bestiality into that whole freaking thing. We don't even need to go into that whole thing about Sonic getting kissed by a human girl.
Come on, don't
speak for yourself, sir. You didn't find that hot?
No.
Oh my!
Don't lump the Dreamcast in with that piece of shit.
Yeah.
Let's just Let's just remember that the Dreamcast had a wonderful legacy. It may be long gone, but it's with fans like us, it's certainly not forgotten. We now move on to the plugs of this evening. Who would like to tag in first for those?
Well, I think Xander should first, but the one thing I do want to ask him is, Xander, did you think that girl ever felt his sonic boom?
Probably. Probably had a lumpkin afterwards. But yeah, my plugs. I host a video game podcast called Excess Gaming, and you can listen to that on Podomac.com or on iTunes. You can also listen to it on RetroUnlim.com and YouTube, because I do have a YouTube channel called youtube.com/XanderScullion. And it's funny because actually one of the last videos I just made was Dreamcast memories. So you guys can, watch firsthand my memories of the Dreamcast in that video as well as this podcast.
That was actually one of the reasons why I decided on this show today, because I watched that video and I was like, let's do a Dreamcast memories episode.
Because you wanted to spite Braden by not doing an N64 episode.
No, actually because I was morely trying to entice Xander into...
As I said, I pitched the CDI. I don't...
Who was the one that pitched the N64 last week for episode 64?
No idea. But we will do an N64 episode eventually. We're going to be doing loads of different stuff coming up as well, guys. For the future of I Got Gameplay seems very bright and shiny. Ooh, look, there's sunshine. Hello, sun.
I actually pitched during the show. I actually pitched an idea of maybe doing an episode on console add-ons, since we were talking about the HD DVD add-on and the CDI and stuff like that. Maybe doing an episode on that.
Maybe we shall. Maybe we shall. So, next one, Travis, hit it.
Yes, you can find me on YouTube. I got a couple of channels. Got youtube.com/rose-colored-reviews. The show where I take a look at classic video games, television shows, and movies, and yada, 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 yada. And anyways, I am seriously hard at work on Cartoon All-Stars to the Rescue. I actually got the VHS footage, and I had to remaster it onto my computer so it looks a little more clearer, a little more cleaner. But I'm hard at work at writing a script for it, and I'm going to get it taken care of here real soon. And then also you can check me out on youtube.com/rosecolored Let's Play, and got some great games coming up there for that. And you can find me each and every week here on I Got Gameplay on the Retro Unlim Network, 8 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Central. You can find me also on Thursday nights on Miguel's show, which I just now joined, the Untitled Movie Show, which is also on Thursday nights, 8 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Central. And you can find me on Twitter. TravisScott79 is my handle. And also you can find me Wednesdays on Blog Talk Radio, where I'm on the Daceman show. So there's a big plug for the Daceman. But yeah, good things are coming up.
Very, very true.
Well, as Mr. Travis Goss introduced, I do have my own show that I do every Thursday. Well, when I can, I'll get into that in a second. That would be the Untitled Movie Show, Thursday nights on Blog Talk Radio at 8. Some of you probably know last Thursday we did not have it. Well, I was not a part of the show. I feel like as though I kind of need to explain that. Long story short, I'm going through job transfer issues, and I'm in the process of actually trying to find a place of my own, and because of that, I was kind of burned out that night. I had spent the whole day just making calls to places, desperately trying to find a place that would be open within 2 weeks for me, and that kind of gave me a bit of an issue. But I do plan on making it up to you guys. Due to my schedule, though, with the move, I don't know if I won't be able to do a live episode of the Untitled Movie Show, but I'm gunning for Tuesday night, maybe doing a recorded version and then having Burhan upload that on Thursday. That'll kind of be a backup plan for us to do. And this upcoming recording is going to be the episode I wanted to plan, which was a Ghostbusters retrospective. I wanted to tie it in with the then recent news of Harold Ramis's passing. I figured it'd be fitting to do an episode on the Ghostbusters series, retrospective of sorts. I know I had said we were going to do an episode on video game movies, which we will do, but I really want to do this first. So tune into that, guys. If you guys are going to be available, if you're fans of Ghostbusters, we'll set it up to where we'll do the recording, and then we'll go from there.
Cool. Zach?
You guys can find me and my co-host Kyla, who unfortunately is working right now, on YouTube, youtube.com/Getting Your Nerd On. You can also find us on Facebook. We just put out a video today. We try to put out 3 videos a week. There's a Let's Play, there's a pickup video, and there's a Modest Magic or a Top 10 or something like that. And also things. What was I going to say? I don't know. You can find the band I'm in at killtech9.bandcamp.com. That's KILLTAC, the number 9.bandcamp.com. So check us out, and yeah.
And if you want to find all things Getting Your Nerd On, you can go to www.nerdgenius.com. Also, the Excess Gaming Podcast as well on there. www.retrounlim.com as well, where most of our stuff actually goes on there as well. And you can also check out my article on anime, I believe it's animeworld.com, where I basically talk about my impressions of Dark Souls 2, because I had the chance to play it. Namco Bandai sent me an email quite recently, and stated that how much they loved my video and the article. I don't know why, but they did, so I'm quite happy about that. And also, you can also check me out here on the Retro Unlim Network for I Got Gameplay, which I will be hosting every Saturday from now on, because I quit my Saturday job. Yay! So yeah, guys, check us out for loads of bits and pieces. Got loads of things coming up in the pipeline, and just stay cool and stay everything Michael Burhan. So take it away, Braden.
Okay. So as always, following me on the Facebooks, Twitters, and Instagrams of the world, social media outlets, all that jazz are great ways of staying connected to me. Of course, you can visit my Facebook page. It's facebook.com/Spoodbeast. My Twitter handle is, of course, @Spoodbeast, as well as Instagram.com/Spoodbeast, because, I only use one username for everything. Which, of course, leads to my YouTube channel. It's www.youtube.com/yes, you guessed it, Spoodbeast.
I would never have guessed.
Oh, I know. It was so surprising, right?
Yeah. It's actually Beast Spoon.
Where, of course, I talk about everything Nintendo related. I usually follow up with the Nintendo Directs that happen when they post those. Talk about the recent updates to Smash Brothers. I'll cover E3 when it happens once a year. All that great jazz. Sometimes touching the PlayStation topics as well. Keep following everybody here on the Retro Unlim Network, all the projects that have going on that are related, as well as fanboysanonymous.com. Keep checking out I Got Gameplay podcast. We have a great crew that, put on basically what we can every single week. It's great stuff. So for Mr. Burhan, for Miguel, for Travis, and for Xander, and for Zach, and myself, we have gameplay, and we ask, do you? Good night, everybody.